Hello to that side of the room.
We have to go
Hello, hello.
Danielle, I need to talk to you.
Ms. Yeager, the recording has started and we are live streaming to YouTube.
All right, Madam President, I will count you into this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, please.
Yes, so welcome to the Board of Education's special board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. So the first item is I would like to greet our virtual and in-person public forum guests. The guests who signed up to speak virtually are in a waiting room and can hear, and depending on the device used, see the meeting. And the guests who signed up to speak in person are here with us in the boardroom. When we get to the public forum agenda, your name will be called in the order it was received. And for the virtual guests, the Zoom meeting host will bring you into the main room to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. So probably gonna be 2 minutes today. Please turn on your camera and microphone. And for the in-person guests, come to the microphone at the back of the room in the center aisle. You may not yield your time to another speaker. Once your speaking time is finished, the virtual guests will be ushered back to the attendee waiting room, and the in-person guests are asked to return to their seat. You may choose to leave the meeting at that point and watch the YouTube live stream. And at the end of the public forum segment, we will continue with tonight's agenda. So if you did not have a chance to say everything you would like to say, please email the board members at boarded@aps.edu or call us at 505-880-3729. And tonight, we're also using the closed captioning feature, and the captioning will also be visible on the YouTube live stream. For those speaking during the meeting, please speak clearly so the closed captions are as accurate as possible. So we'll move on to our agenda. Item A was Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. And so would everyone in the boardroom please stand as you're able and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
All right. So will you please join me in a moment of silence for all the APS students who have died serving their country?
Madam President, I apologize. My screen is not being shown on Zoom.
Okay. So I think what we'll just do is that just a general thank you, moment of silence for all of our APS students. And we're sorry that the feed did not show tonight. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and move on to our roll call. Brenda, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon,
Here,
Danielle Gonzalez,
here,
Barbara Peterson,
here,
Crystal Tapia Romero,
here,
Josefina Dominguez,
here,
Courtney Jackson,
here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. So our meeting format, the Board of Education meetings will be hybrid. I can't even speak tonight. Hybrid meetings with community members and public forum speakers having a choice to attend in person, the John Milne Community Boardroom, or virtually at www.aps.edu. Presenters and recognition guests will attend virtually. Public forum, either virtual or in person, is part of the Board of Education meetings on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. And regardless if public forum speakers attend in person or virtually, all speakers must sign up for public forum on the APS website the day of the meeting and before the start of the meeting. So please be sure to visit the APS website to check the agenda. You may participate by attending the meeting in person, watching the live stream of upcoming meetings by clicking on the live meeting stream button on the main board page at www.aps.edu. You can also email input, comments, and questions to board members at boarded@aps.edu or calling 505-880-3729. So our first item for consideration and action is adoption of the May 18th, 2022 Board of Education meeting and agenda.
I move for adoption. This is Peggy. This is Crystal, second.
All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, and so we'll move, Board Member Jackson will lead us in the recognitions of students and staff.
Okay. Welcome to our virtual recognition. The recognition guests and their families and friends have been invited to watch the Board of Education meeting on the live stream as we celebrate their achievements. Our first recognition is Isaac Aragon from Cibola High School. Cadet Aragon recently won first place solo armed exhibition and was named the national champion. The National High School Drill Team Competition is home to the largest and most talented competition field of drillers ever assembled in one location. The event maintains a large team competition at numerous levels with thousands of cadets attending from all over the nation. This year, Cibola High School was the only school from New Mexico to participate in the All Services JROTC Championship, Marine Corps, Navy, Army, Air Force, and Coast Guard. This was also the 40th year anniversary of the competition. Cadet Isaac Aragon competed in the full weight rifle division, demilitarized, which consisted of 41 participants and included the defending 2021 solo exhibition champion. The entered cadets were placed in a blind draw and competition times were assigned. Cadets were reviewed by 3 judges in each round and 8 judges in the final round. Only the top 10 are invited to compete for the opportunity to become national champion. Cadet Isaac Aragon is the first solo armed exhibition champion from the state of New Mexico in the 40-year existence of the competition. That's awesome. Good job. He enlisted in the Marine Corps and will be heading to Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego, California on June 6, 2022. The impact of his accomplishment will have a lasting influence on the Cibola High School Marine Corps JROTC program. The cadets looked up to him and are inspired to continue the great tradition of drillers from the Albuquerque and Santa Fe areas. Congratulations, Cadet Aragon, and best wishes in your future endeavors. Yes. And thank you for your service. Our second recognition is for 4 El Dorado JROTC cadets. Rory Clausen, Joseph Heredia, Tristan Moots, and Haley Garcia recently placed 3rd in the nation at the JROTC All Service Nationals. Rory Clausen and Haley Garcia also qualified for the Junior Olympics and were recognized a few weeks ago. Manzano, Navy, Del Norte, Air Force, El Dorado Marine Corps, and La Cueva Marine Corps competed in the JROTC Air Rifle Nationals. 4 of the 17 precision air rifle teams that competed in the JROTC All Service Nationals were from Albuquerque, which is super impressive. Good job, guys. More than 6,000 high school cadets from the United States and abroad shot an initial postal match on their own ranges and submitted their targets to the Civilian Marksmanship Program to be scored. The Civilian Marksmanship Program scores the targets and invites the top 26 border teams and 13 precision teams from each service, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, to compete in the service championships. At the service championships, the top 7 sporter teams and the top 5 precision teams from each service are invited to compete against each other in the all-service JROTC Air Rifle Nationals. El Dorado shot their best match of the year and finished 3rd in the nation for the precision air rifle category. To become that proficient in anything takes a lot of time and effort. The team practiced hard both during 0 hour and after school. The results of their hard work definitely show. They went from being 14th in the nation after the postal match to 8th after the service championship to 3rd in the all service national championship. Congratulations to the El Dorado All Service Nationals winning team. That's awesome. Our next recognition is the Eisenhower Middle School Show Choir.
Five Star, the Eisenhower Middle School Show Choir, was one of only 9 middle schools invited to participate in a recent competition, the Burbank Blast. The Burbank Blast is sponsored by the Burbank Youth Vocal Foundation, whose mission is to curate a professional level vocal arts program, which emphasizes work ethic, perseverance, team dynamics, creative problem solving, self-growth, and independent learning through a rigorous and demanding regimen of rehearsals, workshops, and live performances, all key skills that enhance post-high school pursuits. Five Star placed 4th in the national competition. Five Star is an auditioned advanced mixed show choir, which combines singing with intricate choreography to create high-energy multi-song performances. Five Star performs at Eisenhower Middle School choir concerts, regional invitationals, and national competitions. This ensemble of 30 to 40 students often participates in extra performances that promote the Eisenhower Choir program, such as the elementary school tour, as well as caroling in Nob Hill. All rising 6th, 7th, and 8th grade EMS students are welcome to audition. However, admittance into this ensemble is highly competitive. That's true. Five Star has a history of being a high-performing middle school show choir locally and out of state because of its hardworking students with a wide variety of talents. If you've never seen Five Star perform, please search using search terms Eisenhower Choir or Five Star Show Choir on YouTube and see what their performances look like during competition. They are awesome. And I personally know several of the kids in that picture right there. They are great. You should see what they do. So congratulations, Five Star. Our next recognition is a middle school artist. Jack O'Brien from Roosevelt Middle School was recently chosen as one of 24 merit winners in the Lions Club International Peace Poster Contest. 600,000 entries were received from 55 countries. Wow. Of the 24 winners, only 3 were from the United States. Others were from Slovenia, Indonesia, China, India, the Republic of Korea, Australia, England, Turkey, Mexico, Portugal, Romania, Canada, Israel, and Bulgaria. Lions clubs around the globe have been sponsoring a peace poster contest for 30 years in an effort to give children everywhere the chance to express their visions of peace and inspire the world through art and creativity. Mr. O'Brien received $500 for his winning artwork. Congratulations on your stunning work of art, Mr. O'Brien. That is fantastic. Wow. Our next recognition is a Civics Bee champion. Anna Richardson from Desert Willow Family School finished the first annual Albuquerque Civics Bee with a perfect score. The Civics Bee was an opportunity for middle schoolers to put their knowledge of the rights and duties of American citizens on display for an audience that included parents, lawmakers, educators, and several APS board members. The 10 finalists were chosen from essays submitted on topics of their choosing. 220 essays were submitted. 5 other APS students, Elian Diaz Arrives, Oliver Rich Jackson, Adam Burianek, Elise Hayes, and Briley Stanford were also chosen as finalists and participated in the bee. Richardson received $1,000 and a round-trip ticket for a celebratory trip. Rich Jackson of 21st Century Public Academy, an APS authorized charter school, and Diaz Arrives of Harrison Middle School, who took 2nd and 3rd place, also received round-trip tickets and a cash award. Congratulations to Ms. Richardson and all of the APS Civics Bee participants. Our last recognition is Sandia National Labs. We all know that without basic needs like clothes and shoes, as well as access to school supplies that help students engage in learning, our students struggle. Yet the district cannot always prioritize these resources in our limited budget. This is where valued partners like Sandia National Labs come into play. They have been a critical partner to APS for many years, helping the district to provide shoes and clothing for our most vulnerable students, as well as school supplies through the Corporate Volunteer Council's annual Back to School Supply Drive. These supports are needed now more than ever, as more families have found themselves in a place where they are relying on community support for the first time. The amazing employees at Sandia National Labs haven't let the pandemic put their longstanding commitment to helping APS students aside. As the 2021-2022 school year began with uncertainty, they shifted their annual collection of school supplies to a virtual fundraising effort that raised more than $20,000. And this February, they continued with their annual Heart and Soul Drive, raising $7,400 to provide shoes and shoe vouchers for students in need. The APS Clothing Bank has received more than $67,000 from Sandia National Labs in the last 5 years alone. This contribution has provided thousands of students with clothes and school supplies. We are so grateful for the kindness and generosity of Sandia National Lab employees through the years and their unwavering commitment. On behalf of the thousands of students you've impacted, the APS Board of Education, and our entire school community, we want to extend a heartfelt thanks to Sandia National Labs and its employees. Your big hearts mean that our most vulnerable students can come to school ready to focus on learning. So thank you. Board members, please join me in showing more signs of appreciation for our recognition guests. Each of these recognitions will be displayed on the Board of Education recognition webpage, and I encourage everyone to check it out. That concludes our virtual recognitions.
Thank you. Our next item is public forum. You need to
One
catch some
moment.
water there. A little dry,
Yeah,
a little smoke in the air.
little smoke in the
I was
air,
gonna say,
yeah.
it's pretty bad.
Okay. I want to welcome our public forum guests who are in the attendee waiting room. Whether you are here with a request for the Board of Education to consider, provide information, or just see how the Board of Education operates, we want to know that you are welcome. The Board of Education has established rules for expected civil behavior during the meeting and public forum. As part of the process to sign up to speak tonight, you were asked to read a copy of the procedural directive that outlines those rules for expected behavior. The presiding officer will enforce these rules as appropriate throughout the meeting. The Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Chapter 10, Article 15, requires that agendas contain a list of specific items to be discussed or acted on at meetings. Due to these rules, public forum is not a dialogue with board members. Public forum is an opportunity for the Board of Education to listen to you and to hear your comments. In just a few minutes, your name will be called in the order it was received. Guests who signed up virtually will be brought into the main virtual meeting room to speak by the Zoom host. When escorted into the room, please have your audio and video on and be ready to speak. Once your speaking time is finished, you'll be ushered back to the attendee waiting room. Guests who are here to speak in person are asked to come to the microphone in the center aisle at the back of the room to speak when your name is called. When you have finished speaking virtually or in person, you may choose to leave the meeting and watch it on live stream. Tonight, there are 3 speakers, so each speaker will have 2 minutes. You will be directed to please complete your sentence quickly at the end of your time so that other speakers have a chance to speak. You may not yield your unused time to another speaker. If you felt that you were not able to convey your message, please send your comments to boarded@aps.edu. And we have something new. In addition, for those of you who are in person, there is a representative from the Student, Parent, and Employee Service Center who is here to help with any specific situations, and she's sitting right there in the back of the room. So thank you for being here. And at this time, Dr. Albright will introduce the speakers.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Lynn Anton. Lynn, you have 2 minutes.
Lynn Anton. I'm here to advocate for APS school counselors. We've had a shortage of counselors in APS for many years. There are some schools that have gone a complete year or more without a counselor. This is unacceptable, especially now when the social and emotional needs of our students are paramount. On top of the shortage, we have counselors leaving our district due to the career pathway system that is currently being overseen by the Albuquerque Teachers Federation. I believe this is a conflict of interest and unethical. We should do everything we can to recruit and retain good school counselors. Instead, this system is driving good counselors to seek jobs elsewhere. Last fall, HR and ATF gave a board presentation on a rubric for the career pathway systems. Well, there'd never been one in the past, but it's really not a rubric, it's a mere checklist. There's no scale, it's either pass or fail with no room for one error. Yes, you must pass 100%. One mistake and it's completely thrown out. Compare this to the rubric and scoring for teachers in New Mexico. In Strand A, a teacher only needs 68% to pass, not 100%. Well, on top of this, myself and another counselor have been harassed for speaking up at board meetings last school year. An article was published on the ATF union website and a letter was sent to board members in August of last year. The article and letter included malicious rumors and gossip about us. We were also the topic of several ATF union meetings this school year. We've gone through the ethical advocate to assist us and we're sent back to HR, who has not responded to our emails. We respectfully request a formal apology for the way we've been treated from both the ATF union president and APS, and we would like that article removed from their website as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathleen Hager.
Thank you. And thank you, board members, for all you do. I'm the proud school counselor from North Star Elementary School. I've also had the honor of working at Carlos Ray Elementary School and Desert Ridge Middle School. 15 years ago, in 2007, APS turned over the human resource function of the promotion of its essential and related services personnel, including counselors, to the Albuquerque Teachers Union. The New Mexico Attorney General, in a determination I received on September 3rd, explained it as this: ATF runs the career pathway system to manage the promotion and salary of district employees, effectively managing a significant portion of the district's personnel system and functioning as a quasi-human resource department for Albuquerque Public Schools. In trying to get more details on how the ATF became a quasi-human resource department for Albuquerque Public Schools, I filed an IPRA request. The response I got was that the appropriate departments have been contacted and there's no documents. There's no record of an MOU or records that are responsive to what the agreement is with the ATF to run this portion of our human resource department. So I guess my question is, do we have an outside agency running our promotion system with no contract in place? Can APS outsource part of its responsibility to its employee without any agreement or documentation? I ask, right now we're in negotiations for next year's contract. And I really ask that we resolve this by having Albuquerque Public Schools Human Resource Department be in charge of its own promotion of its own employees. The other question I have is, for the past 15 years, since we can't find a contract in place, were all the employees that were denied promotions, was they legitimately denied promotions at APS? I'm very concerned. I've been coming for 2 years, and I hope tonight we can get more resolution to this concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hager. Our last speaker is Julie Hinsman. Ms. Hinsman, you have 2 minutes.
You let me know, because I tend to run long.
I will.
Thank you, board members, for allowing this opportunity to speak. I'm here today to bring your attention to the recent announcement from the New Mexico PED as they're seeking public feedback on the draft action plan responding to the Martinez-Yazzie consolidated lawsuit. And that public comment is up through June 17th. So we've got a month. And I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it, as well as your special ed teachers and counselors. Anybody who plays into the care and education of students with disabilities. That's why I'm here today. In light of the recent April 22nd Legislative Finance Committee evaluation of APS and the detailed concerns of special education and APS, does the New Mexico PED action plan provide enough support to APS to address the concerns detailed within the LFC evaluation? Because I have doubts, I have concerns that there's not enough support for this population, specifically for long-term success. An example is their partnership with DVR. DVR is essential for our special ed kids. And they've been chronically short-staffed. Every time I talk to them, it took them 7 months from the time of my son's IEP when they recommended the Driving to Independence program to get the paperwork over to Driving to Independence because there was so much staff turnover. And so they plan on having this partnership with DVR, but DVR is short-staffed. And I don't know why DVR is short-staffed.
Ms. Hinsman, you've reached your 2 minutes. Can you please finish your thought in one sentence?
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of obstacles in getting support to students with disabilities. And they want to be successful, not just in school, but out of school, holding a job alongside non-disabled peers. Isn't that the goal? Does the PED action plan provide enough support to accomplish this? I have my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Hinsman. Board members, that's the end of public forum.
Thank you. Thank you to our speakers tonight. We're going to be moving on with our agenda. Our next item is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Elder, you have the floor.
President Montoya Cordova, board members, community members, and staff. Tonight, you'll get to hear an update on the Extended Learning Time program, as well as an update on government affairs. You will also be asked to consider the approval of the Fine Arts Education Act application. But before that, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things happening around the district. So Albuquerque Public Schools Fine Arts has been honored with the Best Communities for Music Education designation from the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation. And this is the 6th time APS has received this award for outstanding commitment to music education. Now in its 23rd year, the Best Communities for Music Education designation is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievement in efforts to provide music access and education to all students. Research into music education continues to demonstrate educational, cognitive, and social skill benefits for children who make music. Fine arts and music instruction continues to provide high-quality, equity-driven instruction for every student, including social emotional learning with the staff and community engagement. Congratulations to the fine arts staff and our art and music teachers. Last week, we celebrated thousands of graduates in 20 high school graduations, plus 1 graduation, college and career high school, a few weeks before. The graduations, whether for the smaller magnet schools or the larger comprehensive high schools, are a celebration of years of hard work and recognizes the community support around those students. I was honored to be on stage for several of the ceremonies, and I am thankful for your role in accepting the classes throughout the week. It was definitely a reminder of why we do what we do each and every day. Along with our high school graduations, last week we also celebrated students moving on from APS transition services. Our APS transition students ages 19 to 22 have had opportunities to participate in real-world employability development and on-the-job training skills through our community-based transition services led by Lila Ramirez at the newly named Helen Fox Educational Complex. The community-based transition services support independent, confident, and informed young adults to accomplish their personal goals and find their dream jobs. The services facilitate advocacy for person-centered choices, relevant work experiences, job development for employment, and interagency connections towards independent living. The learning models we offer are Project Search, adult-centered community education and support services, and community transition to adult. These learning models provide our young adults with post-secondary education, employment, independent living, and agency connections. I'm happy to report that 80% of our transition students have gotten employment offers and are excited to be gainfully employed, earning their own money and establishing independence in their communities. I'm also pleased to announce that the APS District School Health Advisory Council, known as DSHAC, had a successful year. The DSHAC provides advice and counsel to the Albuquerque Public Schools leadership, the Board of Education, and myself on the development, revision, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the district's wellness policy. The council membership, which I review and approve, is composed of APS board members, students, family members, community partners, and APS staff. Our board representatives this year were Peggy Mueller-Aragon and Danielle Gonzalez. 2 parents and 5 students also served on the council. During this year's council meetings, APS staff made brief presentations about each of the 9 coordinated school health components and received valuable feedback from the council members that staff can incorporate into their programs next year. I would like to thank each of the council members for their active participation this year. APS is hosting a drive up and drop off supplies drive this Friday, May 20th for the firefighters battling the fires in northern New Mexico. The drive for supplies will be from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. in front of the Allison Bruce King Education Complex at 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast. The public can also drop off items at the APS-owned KANW radio station at 2020 Cole Avenue Northeast and at our Leakin Complex, which is where we have our M&O departments. A completed list of needed items is posted to aps.edu. They include water, over-the-counter medicine, t-shirts, and socks. Thanks to all who donate and support these brave firefighters. So Mission Avenue STEM Magnet School recently sponsored a May the 4th Be With You event. The Magnet School, a part of the Engineering the Future Pathway program, hosted an event that met the goals of staff and community engagement, as well as equity and access for all students. Mission Avenue STEM Magnet School is a neighborhood magnet school accepting non-neighborhood applicants. The school provides project-based learning experience focused on STEM for all students. The event was intended to show off student work as well as invite potential families onto campus to see the good work going on at Mission. More than 450 community members attended, which included board member Danielle Gonzalez and executive director of the Board of Innovation, Mark Garcia. Each grade level showcased project-based learning activities and offered a hands-on activity for the community to participate in, such as landing your alien on Tatooine and designing building a spaceship to survive a crash. There was even graphing to determine whether Star Wars or Star Trek was more popular. Apparently Star Wars won. Community partners, including the 501st Legion Stormtroopers and Air Force Research Labs, attended and engaged with community members. Engineering the Future Pathway partners, Garfield STEM Middle School and Valley High School attended to promote our K-12 STEM Pathway program, the first in Albuquerque. May the 4th Be With You was so well attended this year that it will become an annual event.
That's nice.
And then recently, 12 students from Rio Grande and Cibola High School participated in the first annual National Career Development Conference held in Dallas, Texas. Students were connected to the conference by Jobs for America's Graduates, New Mexico. Jobs for America's Graduates is a school re-engagement strategy with a long track record of results in New Mexico and throughout the nation. They help students at greatest risk of dropping out to show up, reconnect, and graduate from high school, ready for college, career, and life. The conference was an opportunity for students to compete in career readiness events, attend workshops, and visit a college and career expo. Competitive event winners from our state competition were then qualified to compete at the national level with 600 other students nationwide. Rio Grande had 2 students place in the top 10 for employability skills and project-based learning showcase competitions. Rio Grande also had a student compete in the prepared speaking event, as well as having a student representative as a voting delegate. Cibola High School had a student representative voting delegate and a student representative to carry the New Mexico state flag in the opening ceremonies. Congratulations to these students and their sponsors. And this concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. All right, let me put on my glasses. Can't see anything. So we're going to move on to our special issues. Our first item is an update on extended learning time program. Dr. Antonio Gonzalez, Associate Superintendent, Learning Zone 2, Alvaro Ramazzini, Principal, Alamosa Elementary School, and Anne Marie Strangio, Principal at Lew Wallace Elementary School. You have the floor.
Board President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Superintendent Elder, good evening. As mentioned tonight, I am joined by Anne Marie Strangio, the principal at Lew Wallace Elementary, and Alvaro Ramazzini, principal at Alamosa Elementary School, as well as Dr. Heather Bassett. We will update the board around extended learning opportunities within APS for the 2022-2023 school year. Before we do that, some context around programs involving extended time in APS is important. To note that prior to the 2019 legislative session, where K5 Plus and ELTP became school-wide programs, APS did have as many as 60 elementary schools participate in optional K3 Plus programs. Prior to the pandemic, we had as many as 7 schools participate in wall-to-wall K5 Plus, and about 10 schools participate in ELTP or 10 additional day programming. In 2017, APS created an extended day model with 10 days and extended days for educator PD and student enrichment as a response to PED school closures at 3 of our former MRI schools. We believe the 2019 legislation for ELTP was modeled after these schools. However, we believe the APS TOPS model is much more robust implementation of ELTP statute. During the 2021 legislative session, HB2 provided funds for a PED pilot to use the equivalent hours of K5 Plus and add 10 days, but also extend the days as we have done in APS. In APS, that became our 8 TOPS schools that joined the 3 original MRI schools, bringing our number to 11, participating in state-funded ELTP, but also adding time to each school day. This next year, we will be using America Rescue Plan federal funds to add 9 more schools, bringing APS to 20 schools in the TOPS model, which we believe is a much more robust implementation of the statutory vision for ELTP, which responds to the Yazzie Martinez decision. From 2017 to now, APS has collectively learned a lot about why time matters to instruction and professional development. This update tonight is to keep you grounded in all the work and lessons we can continue to refine that we believe works for our communities around extended time models. This work around time and school transformation is built around the framework or pillars of community schools and ongoing support for principals, transformational coaches, community school coordinators, and staff are embedded as part of this onboarding process. Based on board direction, these school communities have opted to join the existing top schools for school year 22-23 through staff and community vote. These schools are Alamosa Elementary School, Carlos Rey, East San Jose, Inez Elementary, Lew Wallace, Longfellow, Los Ranchos, Marianne Binford, Matheson Park, and Reginald Chavez. We are excited to onboard these schools into the work And to explain a little bit about the process that was used and the work that is anticipated, I'd like to introduce and turn it over to Anne Marie Strangio, the principal at Lew Wallace Elementary.
Board President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Superintendent Elder. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Anne Marie Strangio, and I am the proud principal of Lew Wallace Elementary School. I'm guessing I was invited to speak to you tonight because in our meeting, when we talked about becoming a top school, I literally came out of my chair with excitement at the opportunity. Lew Wallace has been trying to build something like this for a long time, trying to figure out how to embody the model of embedding enrichment opportunities and a longer school year into our school. We have always done summer school or K-5 plus or something to keep our students learning for longer. The vote for our school was relatively easy. Our school community, our parents asked what the staff wanted. They really trust our staff. And so our staff did a vote first and was overwhelmingly in favor of moving to the TOPS model. Our school community came along and supported that move. So it was an easy thing for us. More days is really important, but I want to tell you what we are super excited about is the longer days, the ability to continue with all day rigorous education while also having enrichment time with our students through the Genius Hour. So Lew Wallace has tried to do a school-wide enrichment model for many, many years. We did it once a week. And the thing that inspired us to do it was when we looked at our gifted education population, it looked very monochromatic. We wanted every student in our school to have a gifted ed sort of experience where they got to explore things that interested them, where we got to push students learning in different ways, where students got to learn in small groups in depth with things. So our Genius Hour is so exciting to us. And when I told teachers that we would get money to help support buying the supplies to Genius Hour, there were cheers. We feel like we're going to be able to build amazing experiences for all of our children and not just those with gifted ed IEPs. The expanded day is such a gift to us because we were loath to give up our rigorous academic time. Currently at Lew Wallace, we have 2 hours that we devote to staff meetings and PD and adult time every Wednesday. Today, my staff met from 1 o'clock until 4:39 while we talked about how to implement these ELTP endeavors before we even get to the summer. We are so excited to have the SQT time in the morning where we're going to get to prioritize our staff work. We're going to get to set aside time deliberately for collaboration every single week instead of just monthly. We are going to get to facilitate the reimagination of our school and all the possibilities that come with that post-pandemic. It is not going to look the same as it did when we went into this pandemic. And this is really going to allow us to refocus on adult actions in a proactive way instead of the reactiveness that has really driven these last 2 years of pandemic learning as we looked for ways to fill the gaps for kids. Now we're going to build things before they become gaps. My staff is so excited about national boards as a possibility. I did my national boards a decade ago. I have a few teachers who got it just after that, but we are a staff of educators who are hungry to continue growing and learning and improving for our students. I currently have 4 EAs working on teaching programs. I have 1 teacher who just got her master's degree this week. I have 2 more in a master's program. I have 2 teachers currently working on their national boards. We believe and we know that professional growth is personal growth, and that benefits our students. Our school staff wants to always model lifelong learning for students. We are truly a community of learners, and we're going to be able to grow that with this new model, especially if we're able to help more teachers become nationally board teachers. I will tell you that personally, my national board journey was one of the richest learning experiences I ever had as a teacher. Lew Wallace is already a community school. We embody the community school mindset and framework. The community school model frames everything we already do. It is our framework for our equity work, for our wraparound services. It will become that for our Genius Hour and our shared leadership with both the community and the parents. We're really excited at the opportunity to to focus on expanded and enriched learning time and experiences for all of our students, and partner with our community for the Genius Hour opportunities and invite parents to join us in that rich time with students that honors their gifts and deepens our understanding of our community and our school at the center of that community. We are over the moon at the opportunity to get a transformational coach who will move our data reflections from compliance and accountability to true reflection that guides our next steps in teaching so that we can meet our students' needs. And I am ready to spend that summer support work money so fast. My staff is ready to get in and do the work. Today, they started designing the master schedule for next year. They are so excited about moving into this. So I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Strangio. Mr. Ramazzini?
Board President Montoya Cordova, members of the board and Superintendent Elder, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Alvaro Ramazzini and I am the principal at Alamosa Elementary School. This opportunity we have is going to help Alamosa Elementary School transform our school and help me have the opportunity I've been seeking to rebrand my school. I shared this information with my community during a parent meeting, daily robocalls, emails, and visiting parents as they parked waiting for parent pickup. I wanted parents to see the importance of the extended day and how it would directly impact our students, learning, engagement, and also our teachers professionally. We introduced the extended day to the entire staff during a staff meeting, and we made it clear the critical points that we will extend with our extended day. The first element of the model I want to talk about is the extended professional time for our educators, for my staff. Teachers need the opportunity to effectively implement change without disrupting the classroom. Teachers are needed in the classroom, and when they have to leave for half the day or a full day to attend professional development, the students are directly affected by the absence of their teacher. Also, securing substitutes this year has grown increasingly difficult. The immediate use of PD will help teachers build on their pedagogy, their first teach methods, to gain a deeper understanding of the rigor of standards approach that will instill the skills, the range from critical thinking, high-level questioning, accountable talk, and gradual release to all students, which reflects the Yazzie Martinez decision. Teachers receive PD throughout the year. With on-site extended professional time, these teachers are more likely to put into action their practice immediately because of the instant gratification of examining real-time data and seeing the results. The second element of this model is the student enrichment time. According to research, traditional class times do not often create a lesson that's supported around the students' different interests or experiences. With student enrichment time, students will be given opportunities to make choices about what they are passionate about, not just the traditional school subjects. These opportunities will create passionate learners and inspire educators to think differently about their instructional time. Lastly, Alamosa is one of the 9 schools joining the existing 11 elementary schools in implementing the TOPS model next year, because the teachers and the community believe in the opportunities created by the 10 days and the extra enrichment day we will have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramazzini. Dr. Bassi?
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, President Montoya Cordova, and members of the board and Superintendent Elder. This is Heather. And as your Government Affairs liaison tonight, I just wanted to highlight some of the aspects of the model that you heard described tonight that align with the APS legislative agenda in the past, as well as some of the uses of the ARPA dollars to reimagine education in APS. So current state law, just to kind of make clear, allows APS to gain the funding for the 10 days added onto our calendar. But the 10 days do not in statute include funding for the longer day, for the embedded professional daily professional development. It doesn't include funding for the enrichment hour or genius hour or the community school coordinator or any other instructional support like the transformational coaches. So that funding in the pilot schools was through a PED grant from House Bill 2 in the 2021 session. which this next year will be the second and final year of that pilot. The 9 schools coming on board are getting funding for those elements from the America Rescue Plan. So that's why we continue to want to speak with legislators about ways that ELTP funding factor can be developed into something more robust that will fund those elements. So it's a full package that we're offering and not just the 10 days to schools. So ELTP statute does require that districts offer after school activities to students, and it requires that we report 80 hours of professional development for teachers. And though I think that statute was modeled a little bit off of what APS was doing prior to 2019, we feel like the TOPS model is, and I think these principles described is a lot more robust than just that compliance metrics in statute. So I just wanted to point that out to you based on what I heard. Mostly, I'm really honored to be a part of this panel and hear from Emery and Alvaro. This for me is also the interim. So it's awesome to be able to check in and go to these schools and talk to the principals and hear what they're doing that works with state level policy or not, or what needs to be adjusted. So it's kind of my interim study time too. And I thought it was a great opportunity to show you all kind of what how I hear what they're saying connects to what we're still trying to do at the legislative level. So that's it for me, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Bassett. And Madam President, members of the board, I would like to point out that Ms. Strangio and Mr. Ramazzini are 2 fine examples of the principals who are taking on this model for next year. However, for the purposes of a timely presentation, we have 2 ambassadors, if you will, presenting tonight. But I do want to recognize the other principals and thank them for their work during a relatively short timeline to onboard the programming. So thank you, Ms. Strangio and Mr. Ramazzini, as well as all of our colleagues who worked to get to this place. And with that, Madam President, we are open for questions or comments.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and your time. We appreciate you being here tonight. I'm sure there's going to be a few questions. So what I'd like to do is I'll start on to my left with Board Member Dominguez. Do you have some questions for the panel?
I don't have questions, but congratulations. I'm really pleased to hear that you're getting transformational coaches. I think that's critical to the program. I think it's also critical to have a community coordinator and being a community school. Actually, so I'm assuming that Alamosa is also a community school. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Because it is the right way to do it. It is absolutely. And, I look forward to some deep learning and about why, or some deep learning about District 6 and the constituents that I heard from as to why that was not going to work when we rolled out the ELTP. I'm hoping that we can do it right across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member. Board Member Tapia Romero.
And I think mine too is also just more comments versus questions. And I want to start just with a comment to Ms. Strangino. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Strangio.
Strangio. Goodness gracious. But I just love the way you owned it in terms of what you were doing. You could see your passion, your love for your school overall. Just those few minutes that you were talking, I was like, yes, I love it. So great job to you, because obviously it starts at the top. And the fact that both of you bought into the vision and said, you knew this was going to be a great fit. Yesterday when I had the opportunity of meeting, oh goodness, I'm going to say this name wrong too, Mr. Ramazzini. Is that close?
You right on.
Okay, awesome. When I had the privilege of meeting you yesterday and you told me how you were literally in the pickup line talking to the parents, knocking on their windows and really sharing with them the why we, in terms of why you needed this and how it was going to benefit the students and the families. And you rallied all of your staff together. I was like, yes, again, it was done right. And I just want to commend the two of you. It started at the top. I was someone who was in favor of, passing this throughout our schools. So great job to the two of you. I look forward to seeing the outcomes of this program and seeing the money well spent and really supporting our staff and the students going forward. So just kudos to you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
And I know Miss Strangio, how she appears on the screen is how she is in person. And she is just always a delight. If you ever get a chance to go to her school, she's so welcoming and you would just love to see what they're doing there. So I always say thank you to her because she's so awesome. And then Mr. Ramazzini, I'm so excited that you're at Alamosa. My sisters went to school there and I was lucky enough to be able to spend 3 years of my teaching career at Alamosa. It's a great neighborhood. It's where I grew up. So you're at a wonderful place with wonderful families. So the couple of questions I have for both of you is when it came to, the vote, can you both tell me what the percentage of staff and parents voted for the ELTP?
I can't tell you the exact numbers without looking them up, and I closed that page. My staff was, I think, 78%. And we did a live vote before we recorded our votes, just as part of our conversation so that we could feel where we were as a community. And even the people who held back said, I can get on board with this. For almost all of the people that held back, it was because of their own kids' schedules or personal reasons. Our school community, I think, was something like 58% in favor of ELTP plus, and it was like another 15 that was for ELTP. So between the two of them, it was still a pretty super majority.
Great.
Yes, I do remember these numbers because I fought very hard to get my word out there. We started off very slow with the community. After the first week, we only had 30 members, 30 communities vote. And by the last week, we got to 300. And it was 54% were in favor of the TOPS model. And of course, 46 were not. And as for staff, we had 72% were in favor of the extended day. It was really great to see the buy-in. This is my first year as the Alamosa principal, and this was amazing to have because the vision I have to retransforming the school and bringing back the community involvement, and not only that, just the resources, everything. It's exactly where we need to go forward in reimagining and transforming the school. So thank you.
And then to speak toward that, both of you, do you feel that any of your staff, because I know a lot of it has to do with families and what schedules work for them, are you concerned at all that some of them will leave because, they just can't do it because how much we need our teachers? And same thing about families. I know in Lew Wallace, that's just such a school of choice, so I'm just wondering what you think when it comes to anybody who may leave.
I was more worried about the opposite. I was worried about losing teachers if we didn't move to the TOPS model. My teachers were very, very excited at the opportunity. I don't think anybody's going to leave. People, even the people who are worried, are willing to try it through. And what I suspect, because of that attitude, that when we live through it, it will become our new normal. And we'll be all right. But everybody's willing to stick through it for this first year and into the second to see if we can make this be something really amazing.
Good.
I'm in the same boat. I've had a few staff members come to me prior to the vote when I was explaining to a staff meeting. They were very worried that their time was with their older children was going to be an issue. And I did explain to them, yeah, that is definitely an issue that we will run into. But I did tell them I would support them the best way I could in this model. And I think that assurance and that buy-in to them really gave them that feeling that, okay, this is the way we're going to go, and this is what we need to happen at this school. So as for teachers leaving, I don't believe I'll have any teachers leaving Exodus. And that was one thing I got from families as well. They wanted not only for kids, for daycare, but what I got was from parent pickup lane was our kids need to be in school longer. That's what they told me. So I said, this is a great opportunity. So I hope my enrollment actually skyrockets after this first year.
That'll be good to see, because that'll say a lot about the program. And so can you each tell me then, can you tell me what the school day when does it start for the students and when does it end? So what time do you start, Ms. Strangio? What time do the kids start?
Students will go 8:30 to 4 o'clock every day.
Okay.
Teachers will go 7:30 to 4 o'clock.
Right.
Yes, I am in the same. It will be a 8:20 to 3:50 for my students, and teachers will start at 7:15.
Okay. All right. And then I know that Mr. Ramazzini, that you said that it will benefit your students. So can you both tell me how you see it benefiting them? In what way, whether it's socially, whether it's academically? I mean, it can be different things for them. So if you could just tell me quickly, both of you, how you feel it will benefit your students.
Board Member Mueller-Aragon, you've seen our school-wide enrichment model that we love so much. One of the ways I see this benefiting is one of our challenges has been both the tension between the belief that play and enrichment and student-directed and student-driven learning makes for really excited students. And also, we are accountable for a rigorous curriculum, and we have so many things we have to cover for our students. We take that so seriously. And so there's always this tension between not wanting to give up the rigorous academic time, but knowing that we have to provide balance for our students. And so this extended day with the built-in enrichment is going to allow us to make sure that every student has both every day, that we don't have to cut back on our reading time or our math time in order to work that in. And we don't have to sacrifice children having fun and excitement and enrichment in their days because we're so worried about academics.
And school should be fun.
I have a few words. My first word and my biggest word is opportunities. These kids need more opportunities than what's actually giving to them today. Inquiry-based learning. Kids are very, the word I'm looking for is instant gratification, and this enrichment will give them the student choices, the opportunities to expand their prior knowledge and their thinking skills. The resources our teachers will get from the on-site PD can directly impact the students immediately. They'll have the PD in the morning and go into practice immediately. They'll get the data, the results, see what works and what doesn't work and how to build on it. And these kids, again, it comes back to the opportunities. These kids will have various activities that will touch all four: the reading, the writing, the math, the critical thinking, but they're going to do it in a way that it is exciting and fun. They're going to see smiles and laughter, what I want to see back after 2 years of being online and during this pandemic. And I think once the kids see that, feel that, and parents start to hear that, you'll see a growth completely around this neighborhood and school.
Well, good. I just wish you and our students and families the very best.
Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez.
You're going down the line.
Well, I went down that line this way and a line down this way.
I am ready though. So I don't know that my question is necessarily for the principals, but it's more about ELTP generally. So maybe Superintendent Elder. But according to the school performance framework, the support plan for tier 4 schools includes a variety of things that are similarly part of TOPS or ELTP, but specifically lists programmatic expectations, participation, and school improvement model. So my question is, what is the overlap between the tier 4 schools and ELTP?
Well, there's some in terms of support services, but there's not necessarily the extended time or the extended days that the TOPS. So I think what we learned this year was that we were told pretty much the entire year, no, 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 don't do this, no, 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 from a lot of sources. And we could have begun the education of communities and schools much earlier and given them more time to consider it. But again, we were told, no, 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 not now, not now. Well, next year, I think we need to go out again, give people time to really dig into it with more and more knowledge, because we are beginning to see from the schools that adopted it, 5 years ago, promising results and changes that are very interesting. Los Padilla sent me a really interesting piece of data on their reading and math scores, and how far that behind those students were at the beginning of the year and how much was made up. It was a tremendous growth. I think that had something to do with the time and the ability to do things that the kids wanted to do. So as far as what will happen next year, sure, we can provide support and targeted assistance. Those schools may not have the same structured time for that adult learning that I think you see in the TOPS model, which I think is a really key element. And, as we talk about the legislative update and a little bit about the LFC, we may get into that as far as some of our asks with the legislative body moving forward.
Thank you for that. Do you have a number, though, of how many schools are tier 4 and not ELTP?
Oof, I do, but it's hanging on a wall. It's hanging in the war room upstairs. Antonio, do you know that?
I don't off the top of my head. It's we can pretty easily get it to you, Board Member Gonzalez, before too long.
There was how many tier 4 would you say there were?
Off the top of my head, Superintendent Elder, Madam President, Board Member Gonzalez, I would say there's less than 10 schools that are not participating, 10 tier 4 schools that are not participating in an extended learning program of some kind.
That's probably reasonable.
So then that raises questions for me then about the teeth, for lack of a better word, of the school performance framework. If these are the quartile of schools that are tiered at the 4th level, or lowest performing or whatever, and the proposed expectations are listed here, but then they're not doing it, what is the plan then to make sure that those students in those schools are getting the appropriate supports that they need?
Well, and again, Antonio, I don't know, you probably have more direct answer on this than I do, but again, we can tier support. Part of the problem with the ELTP was that we went out and asked the community to vote, and probably in those schools, we need to go back in and see why they didn't vote for it. So we do have a community survey coming out that we've commissioned that will ask the questions around what are the barriers for you agreeing to move into this. We have the anecdotal, the parents just say, children need time to be children. We want to be with our kids in the summer, which, that's there. But we addressed quite a bit of that in our calendar. And so what is it now that still stands in the way? And I suspect we'll find it's still a lot of those items, and just people who really don't want to give up the 10 days. So, but we'll continue to work on that. But if the community at this point voted no, we are a little limited in terms of, as you say, the teeth. But we are going to push other models as best we can. So, Antonio, did you want to add a detail or?
Yes, Madam President, Member Gonzalez, Superintendent Elder. I would only add to what superintendent has shared is that we do also have the 8-hour pilot, which is essentially the SQT teacher time, which some of these tier 4 schools are participating in individually. In other words, they're not participating in the extended Genius Hour, but the teacher time and the professional development is something they've opted into. So that is a component of the transformational model, not the complete model, but a piece of it, which is indeed part of it. And we can get you the numbers tiered out by the number of schools participating in ELTP, TOPS, and the 8-hour pilot, broken down by tier, if that would be helpful.
I'd also remind you that one of the key elements that I've been promoting and I will continue to push is the concept of leadership and training our principals in how to be the most effective school leaders they can be. We have some wonderful principals. You have Miss Strangio, we actually had to tone down a little bit for the presentation tonight because she gets excited. We have great leaders who we can point to a lot. But we all have our skill sets that sometimes are more natural than others. And then there's some you have to be trained on. And as I've talked to you in the past, we have had to hire some young principals because that's who apply. And so how do we help them with the expectations? That job has gotten harder and harder. I've only been out of the principalship since 2016, and it was hard then. And we continue to ask more. So what sort of training and support are we consistently providing them? And that's a big push initially. And those tier 3 and tier 4 principals really don't have an option as far as that training. My goal is to provide it to everyone, but we're really going to focus on 3 and 4.
Yeah, so that's helpful to know that that training is required for the principals in tier 3 and tier 4 schools. I guess I still have the question then on what's the point of a school performance framework if we're not doing the full school performance framework as it's on here. So perhaps that's for the accountability committee. But I do have another question on ELT. So extended learning time is a proposed solution for the inequities in Yazzie Martinez. So do we know how many students are defined as or classified as at risk per Yazzie Martinez? So the students with disabilities, Native American, English learners, et cetera, who do not have access to extended learning time?
Not at my fingertips, but it's a number that's easily developed.
That would be helpful. Because then my follow-up too is just how, if we're going to truly be responsive to Yazzie Martinez, how can we ensure that if you're a student who is zoned in a tier 4 school that's not doing extended learning, or you're defined as at risk, that you have access to those remedies that were defined by the court, but also funded by the legislature?
Well, the legislature funded things, but put in all the little loopholes. So we can say it was funded, but there were loopholes. And allowing community input is one of them, which I think is great. I'm all for community input. I think you have a stronger decision and you have people who are more committed. We have areas of town that are dead set against it. They don't like the idea. And they have reasons. They have reasons. So what do is we'll do the best we can to, so that you read that Yazzie Martinez plan. The point today was made, do they have the resources to do what they're saying? There's a lot of one-off programs in there. And it's got a whole lot in there, but how much of that we can access and how much of that we should access is probably where we need to take our next steps, especially looking at those students that are perhaps not in the ELTP.
Yes, I think then it would be helpful to have an APS an APS version of the PED plan responding to what's on there, which makes sense for our population. But I guess if I am a parent of a Yazzie Martinez student, or if I'm a parent zoned for a school, tier 4 school that needs improvement, and I'm not able to access these services that my state and the courts are saying that I should have for my student, what do I do? And is there any sort of like policy in terms of like preferred transfer into ELTP school or something like that that we could put on the table to enable equity for the kids named in the Ozzie Martinez lawsuit?
If you wanted to develop that policy, I think it could be added. I don't see why it wouldn't. We have added other components. I mean, you've got military families, you've got children with siblings that are already at the school. Transfers have not, there are schools it's really hard to get into. And I would love to see like Alvarado become one of those schools since he brought it up. I thought that was a great thought there. I don't suspect at this moment it would be real hard for students to get in if they chose to. So we could look at that if it actually became a problem with size. But I'm not sure it would become one.
Yeah, okay. I would be interested in exploring that, understanding more about the data, how many students we have that are Ozzie Martinez students that aren't being served, so that we could determine whether that type of policy would make sense. And then my last question is just which tier are the schools presenting tiered in?
Madam President, Member Gonzalez, Lou Wallace is in tier 3 and Alamosa is in tier 4.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Peterson.
So this is sort of the perfect confluence of issues that have been coming up between our response to the PED and the Ozzie Martinez. I think that needs to be the topic of a board meeting. I think we need to have a much more thorough conversation, and it is definitely needing to be tied to our strategic plan. And I mean, I think a lot of the points that Board Member Gonzalez was making is what we need to really have in front of us. One of the things that I was going to bring up in board member comments, but it's really applicable now. The last 2 days, there's been a share fair for the APS ATF professional day pilot. And I couldn't get to the elementary school one, but I got to the middle school and high school one yesterday. And I have never felt that level, no offense, high school and middle school teachers, because I love you and it's hard work, but I've never been in a room that filled with energy about it and excitement about their professional practice, and really looking at everything from grading for equity to looking at what a world citizen, I forget the exact name of it, but the World Citizen Seal, I think there's a better name for it than that. But anyway, teachers really engaged in practice, thinking in a practical way. In the day, I'm curious if your day, extended day, will be modeled on this, because they do look at over the 5 days, collaboration time, planning time, that whole sort of array of what teachers need to be doing professionally. So how closely will your days be modeled on what the professional day pilots working on?
Board Member Peterson, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead. I would just like to say, it is identically modeled after what you've just described, and that is what we refer to as the SQT model. So I'm sorry, Ms. Strangio.
I was just going to say, we were one of those 8-hour pilot schools. And that was one of the reasons, Board Member Peterson, that my staff was so excited to try to become a TOPS school. They really enjoyed having that time set aside for collaboration, not just trying to collaborate on their own on the weekends or after school or during lunch hour, but that there was an hour on the calendar every single week where they were going to get to just sit with their peers and guide their own professional learning. And we also did time with our PLC groups, which was not necessarily related to our curriculum, but to teachers' own self-selected professional learning goals. And that was just such a gift for them to have the time to really sit and talk about their own learning. And then in our collaboration time, turn that into what is that going to do for my students?
I think that one of the things that we need to do, and this is from the leadership point of view at our end, is really learn how to share that's what's going to win people over to the extended day. We sort of know what the history of top-down mandates are in terms of how long they last and what kind of impact. And I think this is where it really goes to leadership, is how do we share the knowledge base that wins people over to good practice? And it's being developed and exhibited. So how do we make that part of what we show as a district? So anyway, I think that's really important. Another concern that I have, I mean, we know from research that emotional well-being is the underpinning and foundation of everything that happens to a student in a school. But we still have yet a way of actually showing, first off, a way of actually knowing, are we supporting social emotional learning and the emotional mental health of our students? And secondly, do we have a way of documenting that? Because I fear that the LFC and the PED really don't care about kids smiling when they come to school. They want to see numbers. And we've got to somehow craft, I think, in our assessments, a way of quantifying the fact that smiles and emotional well-being actually is of value, does have an impact. And I don't think we've developed that. I think there are ways that districts have done that. But I'm sitting here looking at our APS dashboard on SAPR. And when I look at this, I don't see anything that reflects the kind of process that's going on in our ELTP schools. One of the things that I know anecdotally from Hawthorne, I mean, they have the numbers too to prove it. Their staff, and this is true of Whittier as well, it probably is of Los Padillas, I'm just not as familiar, that they have the data to show that teachers and students' families come back to their schools at a much higher rate than had been the case before they moved to the ELTP and Genius Hour model. And they can show that, but I think that's something, somehow when I look at our dashboard, we need to be showing that kind of information. The fact that we got an award for being one of the best arts environments, communities to be in. There's nothing that connects that with what we see students doing academically. We know research-based, that information is there, but there's nothing that reflects all of those things in our dashboard. And I bring this up because I think when we look at our response to the PED proposal for Yazzie Martinez, if we're going to go deeper than just checking off, yes, we did this, no, we didn't, yes, we're doing this, no, we didn't, we need to have a much more strategic formulation of showing what we're doing. And I think the ELTP model can be one of the things that we show, but we need to figure out more creatively than just the formative and summative assessments, what impact it's having on students. That we need to be defining in a better way how we're documenting success in regards to Yazzie Martinez and how we're serving those students. So I'm not sure who can respond to this right now, Because some of it's at the school level, but a lot of it has to be at the district level for putting this together. But I think we are not going to get where we want to be if we don't figure out how to do that. I have some other things, but that's really the essence. I think we need to really figure out how do we, first off, how do we measure? Is it being effective? And if not, if so, in what ways? And how are we demonstrating it?
Madam President, Member Peterson, Superintendent Elder, I agree. Looking at traditional and perhaps untraditional measures is important, and I can speak anecdotally and qualitatively first that some of the evidence that we've seen in terms of the program effectiveness of this model is the teacher mobility and teachers staying at, let's use the 3 original schools, for example, at a very high rate. So the teacher mobility has come to kind of a stop. They're not moving, they're staying. And we know that programs are built on people. And that is a huge first step toward a school transformation. And we have also heard that attendance, and a lot of this goes to pre-pandemic conversations, is the Genius Hour was really a hook for keeping students in school throughout the day and really being the resistance, if you will, toward no, not this afternoon. I can't leave for a dentist appointment. I need to stay for Genius Hour, or whatever the conversation was. So we've heard that over and over and over again. So there's that investment by the students, by the parents, that really success breeds success, and you have a groundswell, if you will, of just investment in the school and the community. And then what we've seen is what the superintendent mentioned earlier out of Los Padillas in regards to more traditional measures of math and reading scores growing and increasing, just from, take for example, August of this school year to now the conclusion of this school year. And I think that was a bright spot in terms of a good example of some of the growth that we've seen in more traditional measures. So I think that has been and needs to be a continued emphasis and focus of the project effectiveness of this work around ELTP. I think we've been able to harness some of those measures, but certainly a lot of work to be done as we do continue sustainable funding toward programs like these.
I guess that's just one more request, and this is more sort of going back to the discussion about the leadership, principal leadership. I would really love to see what the essence of that is. We have committed a fairly large amount of money. I think it's important, but we really haven't gotten any picture of what it really looks like and what's happening and what the impact is. So I think that's one of the things that we need some follow-up on, because it does blend in to all of the rest of this discussion. And one thing about Lew Wallace, I'll end here. One of the things about Lew Wallace is that Ms. Strangio's leadership is also really based on the collaborative nature of the work that she does. You are wonderful, but you pull on the strengths of the rest of your community and your staff, because the door is open for how do we solve issues that are facing us. And that's the essence of the community schools and the work that the community school is doing there, and how that ties into the academic progress of students. It's a whole total package and not just one little piece. And I think that's really critical to point out. So for all of you, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Board Member Jackson.
Thank you. I just have a couple comments and then I think 2 questions. So my first comments are to not only the principals that are on the screen that we can see. You both obviously have passion for your schools, and that is something that needs to be commended. I am sure that the principals of the other schools who are not on the screen are just as passionate. And so I would also like to commend them on what they have done. I think it really speaks to your knowledge of your community and what the needs were of your particular school community, that you were so engaged in the ELTP vote. And so I commend you for knowing your community so well. What I think has turned out well about this whole process, even though I don't think it was rolled out very efficiently, but what I do think has come to fruition at the end of it is that we have a really good learning ability, but with the fact that 20 schools, am I correct? 20 schools are now in this process. And what I think that gives us is some data, some baseline data. We can now see what, about a third, maybe a little less than a third, maybe a quarter of our schools who truly needed it, who truly needed this extended learning time and TOPS model. We're going to be able to see how that directly affects student outcomes. And I know Superintendent Elder mentioned that Los Padillas had sent some information, but we need some, which is fantastic. I think what this is also going to do is provide some longer term data so that if it does turn out to be effective, which we all hope it does, then having that information will also help to propel us forward as we move forward with some strategy. I also really like to hear from Dr. Bassett. I was really thrilled to hear that you say that we are in continued discussions at the legislative level, because I won't repeat the conversations because we all know what we thought were problems. So I'm glad to know that they were noted, and I'm glad to know that they will be continued in the discussions that we have as we move forward, because I think one thing that is critical, and this goes to the tiers, is there are schools that have different needs, and it is important that we focus on what those needs are of the school. And I think that the way that this vote turned out reflects that very well for what our needs are right now. So the two questions that I have is, I'm going to piggyback off of Board Member Gonzalez. I would actually be interested to know, and I went on to SAPR to see if I could find it. If it's there, please somebody let me know. But I would actually like to know what the tiering is for all of the schools. For my district, I would like to know what the tiers are in my district. And if it's somewhere that I could easily find, please let me know. If not, if you could please send that to me and maybe all of the board members to know what the tiers are. Yes, I'm getting a whoop.
We'll want it.
Okay. So I think that would be something that would be critical for us to know, especially as we're looking at the strategic framework and eventually the strategic plan. We need to know the makeup of our community and what the needs are of our district community. So I guess that was technically my first question, but not really a question.
You'll get it.
We can send you the components of the tiers.
Thank you. And then my second question is, again, this goes to you, Dr. Bassett. They noted during the discussion just now that some ARPA funding is going to be used to fill the holes that was not provided through the legislative funding. So my question is, was that in the original plan for the ARPA funding? If not, is that something that needed to come to the board for approval? And if it was in the original plan that additional funding would be there, I don't remember hearing that, and it might have been something we needed to know.
Thank you, Board Member Jackson. This is Heather Bassett. First, I'll just say that when I say filling the holes of the ELTP with the TOPS model, that's definitely an APS perspective. I would think some of the legislative members, staff, and members would say that ELTP, as currently written in statute, should be all you need for those 10 days for the PD and the after-school activities. So that's been an ongoing conversation. And I think through this TOPS model and the program evaluation, they're starting to recognize that they could make that funding factor more robust to do. So we're trying to work that out and, you know, collaborating with them to kind of look at numbers and data and funding and try to get to a place where we think it works for the way we want it to work. But just to, you know, be clear, that's an APS perspective that's not universally shared with legislators yet, but we're getting there. On the America Rescue Plan and the board approved spending plan, there was money set aside for the tier 3 and tier 4 framework that included, and I'm looking it up now. There's the board approved spending plan. So in the unfinished learning, there's tier 4 systems of support and tier 3 systems of support. 28 million for tier 4, 3 million for tier 3. That's the money that's being used for, as Board Member Gonzalez identified, the elements overlap with what we have in the TOPS model. So that's where the money for the supplementing the extended ELTP with extended day and supports is coming from.
So that brings up a question to me. Let's just have an assumption. What if there was a tier 1 or a tier 2 school that had adopted the ELTP TOPS model? Would they not have received the additional funding for the transformational coaches? And sorry, I didn't write down some of the extras that Ms. Strangio was talking about, but and would they not have received the additional funding to quote unquote fill the holes? And if not, why? Because when I was speaking with some of my constituents, the information that I received was that here's an example, there was not going to be money for the Genius Hour, that the teachers, that you would have the Genius Hour, but you would kind of be on your own to receive the money necessary for supplies to fulfill that Genius Hour. So it just seems like there's maybe information that wasn't received.
So these schools that, no matter their tier, that had opted to do the TOPS model, we were planning to fund with that money. Because we're receiving the seed money for the ELTP from the state, it gave us an excess of what we were planning for with the tier 3 and 4 schools. And so that's why we made the decision that we made in order to offer the extended days to the tier 1 and tier 2 schools as well.
So Board Member Jackson, it definitely was a braiding of funding. And I think what you present is a good example of, okay, worst case scenario, 80 elementary schools wanted to opt in, then we would probably have to come back for a revised spending plan for the board to approve to make that possible. So, I mean, just remember that's an initial spending plan. And now, you know, the implementation of the spending plan is going to be what we have to keep monitoring.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that was it. I actually think that it's great that we have a third or a quarter of our elementary schools that are participating, because it will provide great data, and then we can move forward after that.
All right. Okay. So thank you for your presentations tonight. I'll just be really brief. I guess my concern, and it's not so much a concern. First, let me start out first with the strengths. I'm forgetting my upbringing here as a social worker. You always start with your strengths. So one, Mr. Ramazzini, I'm really excited to meet you on here we are tonight. I usually go to the Alamosa community meetings, and I haven't had a chance to make one recently. So I obviously I've missed meeting you there. But Alamosa, I'm grateful that you're there and that you're part of the leadership that's doing this. Obviously, it does, I think the good lessons learned here and the things that we can take forward as we move towards hopefully pushing all of our schools into an ELTP approach, especially our tier 3 and 4, because I'm thinking about those students that, meet that definition on the Martinez-Yazzie and that are at highest risk. What are we doing to make sure that we're actually addressing that? But I think the lessons learned here is just the strategy that needs to be put in place. And that's with the principal leadership around the community and engaging that. And perhaps it's part of us as well. Maybe it's part of a board member also, saying, hey, you are part of my community. This is why we want to do this. And I want to support. And especially on behalf of those kids that we know that are at risk, that definitely would benefit from it. So congratulations to both of you for the hard work that you did with your community. I think that's really important. It's that personal touch of like, this is why this is important. My concern is really around the ARPA funds. So once that's all gone, we're hoping, right, that we will have great data and all of the stuff, and then the fund's gone, and then what the legislature is going to bankroll us so that we can continue it. I'm trying to be realistic about that in terms of the funding, because how long is that ARPA funding available through? What's the date on that?
Goes through 2024, and as part of our legislative update we're about to do, we're going to talk about your question.
Okay. And then I guess the other question is that, we've heard a lot about the how and what we're doing, which I think is great. And I'm hoping that what the schools also are setting is a goal around a student, the student outcomes. So it's like, is there a goal that we're going to try to reach? And I don't know what it is, whether it's a math score, or whether it's reading on grade level. I don't know what those things are, but I'm hoping that that's part of it as well, because I know for us as a board, paying attention to the student outcomes is really critical too. And ultimately, that's what the community wants to see too. They want to hear that this is doing this. And while it is important, I think, for our staff to feel supported and to get the professional development, I just want to know that all of those things are also going to lead to like a student outcome, and that that's part of the process for the schools that are in this program, that they have an opportunity to set that and really kind of, even if it's high, reach for something, and then tell us like, what's the growth that's going on there. And it's not, if anyone wants to give me a comment, I think Mr. Ramazzini was trying to unmute there for a minute, but if you want to share a little bit about your strategy there, that'd be great.
President Montoya Cordova, my goal is to bring a blue ribbon school to Alamosa Elementary School. And I have set a timeline of 3 years. In 3 years, I want to, so the start of the 25-26 school year, we'll be reaching 80% proficiency with all my students, right? All the students. And this program and this extra help, I think, will really give me that extra push and give my staff. I got a great staff that I had a staff meeting. I told them, let's buckle in, because that's my goal. This is my lofty goal. I want to be a blue ribbon school in 3 years, and I will do everything in my power. All of my skin is in this game to make this happen. So I would like lots of people to come visit our school and see the progress we'll be making in the next 3 years. But Alamosa Elementary School will be a blue ribbon school.
I like that, because it's just about setting a goal and a target, and, did we get there? And that's, I think, what the community wants to hear. And with that, the community would certainly buy in, right? We wouldn't have any like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, and probably will have, it's like you said, your other goal of like increasing your enrollment simply by that, because people are going to want to come to that school because it is performing, it's out, the students are definitely not only having fun in school, but they're also meeting really important goals. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Mr. Angio, did you want to add anything to that or?
How could I possibly? That was awesome.
Some competition here, but I was just going to tell the other board members is like, I'm really disappointed that you didn't come with a video and a song about your, because I do love your online videos and songs that you do about just motivating your staff. So
we're recording our last one for the end of the school year right now.
Okay, well, I will definitely look for that one. And then just stepping back to what Board Member Gonzalez was talking about, I really appreciate that in terms of thinking of, why, if we have schools that have been in a Tier 4 status, and we've had them in a status for some time. I mean, because there are some schools that I know have been in that status and they're still sort of on the fence, and what does that mean? And if it does require leadership to push that, as we're thinking about some strategies with those schools, we need to think about how we can really support that leadership to sort of embrace the now, in terms of what's really happening with those students and what's not happening as a result of not making some significant changes. And it does sound scary and it sounds daunting, because I appreciate you being honest too, that, there was still, some of your staff that were on the fence about that, because what we heard, from the community was like, no, don't go there, don't do that. I was definitely on the let's go there, let's do it, because I wanted to, to be bold and just be brave. I mean, I think there's a bit of bravery that comes with this in terms of embracing an ELTP approach and what we're doing. So I'm looking forward to some data that tells us about the students' outcomes in terms of how well they're doing, or what were some of the pieces that shifted as a result of the work that we're doing. So I just want to say thank you very much for the presentation tonight. All right. And with that, I think we'll move on, because look forward to some additional information. Okay, so our next item is item B, and it's consideration for approval of the 22-23 Fine Arts Education Act application for funding. Yvonne Garcia, Chief of Schools, and Gina Rosinski, Executive Director of Fine Arts.
Gosh, I thought you just handed me a degree.
I know, I was, Dr. Garcia, let's just an honorary degree. There you go.
Good evening, board members, staff, and Superintendent Elder. Tonight, we're coming to you with a request for approval to apply for funds from the Fine Arts Education Act. This is an annual request. And so what is in your packet is our goals, our program annual report that we have to give. And so here with me tonight is the expert, Executive Director, Gina Rosinski, and she's going to kind of briefly show you the report, and we can stand for questions, and we request your approval as it is an action item.
Thank you. Good evening, President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Superintendent Elder. My name is Gina Rosinski, and I am the Executive Director of Fine Arts. I'm here to present to you the Fine Arts Education Act, or the FAEA, legislative funding application for school year 22-23. I'm seeking your approval of the application and the required signatures needed to submit the application to the PED. I will quickly walk you through the application that can be found in your packet. For page reference, I will use the page numbers in the bottom right corner of your packet. So the FAEA is legislative appropriations designed to ensure funding for arts education for elementary students K through 6th. The application is submitted yearly. The application requires, the legislation requires that the board president, chief financial officer, and superintendent sign that application on page 11 of your packet. And I would like to quickly touch on the highlights of the application for your approval. On pages 7 through 10 are numbers of enrollment. So the FAEA funding for next school year is based on the average of the 80th and 120th day count from the current school year's enrollment. And the averages for those in grades K through 6 for this school year, the total is there and it's 36,358 students. You can also see on pages 14 and 15 our program goals. They require 3 goals and we actually have 5. So the first goal is that all elementary students will be provided high quality New Mexico core art standards-based instruction by trained and qualified art and music teachers. Goal number 2 is our Bridge to 6th Grade program, which is the funding for a choir teacher in every middle school, a 0.5 choir teacher. It also funds a few art teachers and a few drama teachers. We have also, goal number 3, continued to support new and experienced fine art teachers K through 6 with mentorship through small and large group collaboration, lesson sharing and modeling. After several years of consistent mentoring support, we are seeing middle and high school fine arts teachers collaborating more than ever. The middle school fine arts mentor teachers schedule and facilitate monthly virtual meetings, and they are well attended and support teachers professionally and personally. Goal number 4 is to prepare and present artistic works. The past school year, the Fine Arts Department returned to live art shows and performances and attendance was outstanding. We did keep a little bit of a hybrid model by staying virtual for our Metro Art Show Awards presentation, as maybe you saw on the APS website. And goal 5 is that we are continuing to collaborate with the Special Education Department to support fine arts teachers with professional development and strategies to address the needs of all learners. We have a continued dedication to differentiation for students with special needs in fine arts classrooms. Our continued work in that area will be providing professional development for music, art, and special education teachers, providing a special education resource teacher to support fine arts teachers in meeting the needs of every student in their classroom, and continuing to ensure students with disabilities have the same access and representation in district fine arts presentation of artistic works. Our new initiative this year was to provide weekly art and music instruction for students at our 2 APS autism complexes. We were successful in that initiative and it will continue. We also had participation in both our Metro and Artis Elementary shows from students who attend these complexes. I hope you were able to read the Fine Arts Program summary on pages 16 through 18, as it has more in-depth information regarding K through 6 fine arts programs, professional development, and support for students and teachers. And on page 18 of your packet, it shows the funding formula used to calculate the proposed funding amount for the Fine Arts Education Act for APS. The formula is taking the STARS student enrollment numbers, which are those 80th and 120-day count averages, the FAEA membership, which is 1.0, the multiplier from the FAEA statute, and then the unit value of for school year 22-23. So when calculated, the FAE total that will request from the state will be $9,909,909. How about $1,000 to 227. So with that, President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Superintendent Elder, I am asking for your approval of the FAEA application for K through 6 fine arts funding and the required signatures needed to submit the application before Tuesday, June 1st, 2022. Thank you for your enduring support and valuing what a high quality fine arts education brings to the lives of students and their families. And I stand for questions.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to do first, before we just go into discussion, because I have a good feeling about this, that we're all in support of it. So do you have a motion supporting this?
So moved. This is Danielle.
Second?
This is Crystal, second.
All right. And now I'll open it up.
I'll second.
Yeah. So I think that was Crystal second. Okay, so we're going to go into discussion. Does anyone have any deep questions, discussion, things that we need to do to clarify for this particular application that we're submitting.
I just have
Go ahead.
all these abbreviations.
Oh.
Under funding formula for the Fine Arts Education Act. Item number 2, I now know what FAEA stands for. What's MEM again?
The membership number.
Oh,
Okay.
is 1.0.
Called the MEM.
Membership number.
Any other discussion items?
Well, first off, Artis Elementary and the honor choir presentations just speak for themselves and very wonderful. Just alongside this, since we have you in front of us, it gives me an opportunity. Have we been able to expand our program of both art and music into any new schools this year?
Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Peterson, for this coming year, we were able to expand into 16 more schools in January of 2022. And then with the coming school year for school year 22-23, we've added 4 more.
That is progress. It's good. Thank you, because I know that takes work. And also just a related question, do we still have the relationship with the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts? Is that ongoing, and what's the length of that program?
So Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Peterson, we do still have 2 of the relationships. We have the Any Given Child relationship, and I'm in collaboration with the Office of Innovation with that collaboration, and that provides professional development, arts integration, professional development for teachers, and that did continue through the pandemic and into this year. And then we also have our, the Any Given Child is the teaching artist. I apologize, let me backtrack a little. The Any Given Child relationship with the Office of Innovation is a partnership with the Bernalillo County, the City of Albuquerque, and that is for teaching artists that go into the schools. So that's the Any Given Child partnership. The Kennedy Center 2012 partnership is with the Santa Fe Opera, Los Lunas Public Schools, Rio Rancho Public Schools, and that is the arts integration professional development for the teachers. And that's open K through 12. Some of the workshops are more geared towards secondary, and some of them are more geared toward elementary. So we do still have those partnerships.
That's great. Thank you all.
Sure.
Just in regards to what Board Member Peterson just said, I'm wondering if we could get a list of the schools that have both art and music, including the 4 that will be joining. I would like to see that list if that's possible. And then I would also like to see, or you possibly have it now, in your application, which, by the way, your application was very well written, and I really appreciated all of the detail that you added to it. So that was very nice. At the very beginning, you state that you're using measurable goals and best practices to connect the students to curriculum. I don't think that you probably have it now, but I would be really interested to see the connection between the curriculum and the student outcomes, maybe especially in those schools that have both the art and the music. I would be interested to see that. So if that could be compiled and sent to us, it would be good information to have. And sorry, I'm scrolling to my highlights. There it is. Oh, and then I just a comment. I really enjoyed reading the fact that you were working so closely with the special education department oh yes, that it was the first time that elementary students at the autism complexes had their artwork on display. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I think that that's wonderful that you are working in conjunction with that and that it is in fact one of your goals. So yeah, if we could just have that two sets of information that I asked for would be appreciated.
Of course.
Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
And I just want to thank you, Ms. Rosinski. You know, I'm just such a big fan. And so I'm just always thrilled to see what's going on when it comes to fine arts. So I know that when I was reading this, that phase 3 is going to be completed then in 22-23. So that'll be like four more schools this coming school year. So then do you have any, and this will go to Board Member Jackson's comment. So then we are going to have, will phase 4 and phase 5 come together, or will phase 4 be in school year 23-24 and then phase 5 24-25?
Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Mueller-Aragon, at this time, as we know, things always change and move around. I have written for phase 4 to be implemented in school year 23-24 and phase 5 in 24-25 is what I have submitted at this time. So that's what's on paper.
Okay, that I just assumed that's how it would be. I know that we might be a tiny bit behind, but we're getting there. So the only other question I have is, I know that it was mentioned in here that there was like obviously an enrollment decline, which we know about. So I'm always concerned about our, middle schoolers as well. So were there arts electives that were cut because of a declining enrollment at the middle school level?
Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Mueller-Aragon, there were 2 positions that were cut. I believe one was Jackson Middle School and the other was Grant Middle School.
Okay. And that makes me sad because our middle schoolers need this as well. So do we have a plan, or can we get a plan put together to just kind of focus also after we got all our elementary schools with music and art in 24-25, that we can start looking to make sure that there are fine arts electives at all of our middle schools?
Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Mueller-Aragon, I would love to write something like that.
That would mean a lot to a lot of students. I mean, I know how important that was to my younger daughter. And so just having that in elementary and middle schools, and I know they do have a lot, probably more in high schools than they do in middle schools. So I would appreciate us looking at that. Thank you for all you do.
You're welcome.
Mine is just a quick comment.
Sure, go for it.
I love what we're doing here on elementary and middle school, because that's where I started with music and choir, was in middle school. But aside from this, and again, it's just a comment that not completely tied to it. I was surprised to learn that a lot of this is even missing in high school. Mm-hmm. And I learned it just even being at graduation this week, and I was asking about, how's your choir program? Because that's what I was in high school, and to learn that they didn't have one. Mm-hmm. And it made me so sad, because I don't know what my high school time would have looked like if I didn't have that to participate in, because I really feel like that really molded me, for later in life. And to know that my own school didn't have it any longer, it was unfortunate. So we don't want to take it for granted and just assume that it's in high schools, because of what I'm hearing, it's not anymore. And my hope and passion is that we bring it back, to the extent that it needs to be. And I don't know if are we missing just the teacher? Are we missing, just the students that are interested in doing it? I don't know where the disconnect is, but I couldn't imagine that room being empty. So,
Board President Montoya Cordova and Board Member Tapia Romero, the Fine Arts Education Act is needed for our secondary students as well. So with this money that comes right through the SCG and is funded by the state, we don't have something like that at the secondary level. So fine arts classes are site funded in high school. So that's why some schools have choir and some don't. They're not funded at the department level here or through the SCG.
Yeah.
State issue.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I don't know, I mean, and there's room, obviously, I think, for some creativity in that as well, too, but, you know, some of our smaller high schools maybe not being able to really even draw a choir or make a class in that, but can they still participate if they wanted to with, say, another high school choir? And that would be something that I would like to see as maybe an option or making it available. It's kind of like the same with AP courses, and, you know, sometimes you just don't have enough for a particular course at a school, but how do we, it's going back to that, you know, for students that want a choice or at risk for that, how do we make that possible for them to still have access for those kinds of things? I mean, we're a district with a lot of resources, and it seems like we might be able to leverage, you know, some of the things that we have so that we could sort of think differently about how we make those things possible. It's hard. I mean, I think, who was it that, what was it I heard recently? Like, all the easy stuff has already been tried and everybody's done that. But I think to think critically or to do something completely outside of that is hard. And sometimes to think that way or to do those things, it takes a lot of courage. And, you know, you try it, and if it doesn't work, well, keep trying something else. But, you know, all the easy stuff has already been tried. So I think we're going to have to start thinking about the harder things that we need to do. So I'm not going to belabor this, but thank you so much, Ms. Rosinski, for your energy and time on fine arts. Got to see the student art. It was beautiful. So I always appreciate that. That's always a fun thing, is to be able to just browse through the student art. So thank you for that. So I think we're going to move on to a roll call on this one, because this one is this was a discussion action. And Ms. Yeager, you can call a roll call on this one.
Peggy Mueller-Aragon,
Yes, yes, yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, and with this, we'll move on to item C, Government Affairs Update. Dr. Heather Bassett and Dr. Joseph Escobedo with our Government Affairs team. You're on the mic. Go.
Thank you. President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, Superintendent Elder, this is Heather Bassett again, and I'm here with Joseph Escobedo because we are your government affairs team for the interim. In fact, we're leaving early in the morning tomorrow to get down to Roswell for the interim LFC Education Subcommittee. Starts at 11 a.m. I have the email sent to Brenda to send you the agenda and web link, so you'll be able to tune into that if you have time tomorrow. And so we're going to give you a brief update on the interim committees that have already started. That's what we try to do with these government affairs updates. LESC and LFC both started last month, and then they have now posted their full interim committees that are basically once a month meetings until the next session in January. And then at the end, I'll defer to Superintendent Elder if he wants to talk with you about the LFC program evaluation, just in case he wants to reminisce about his day with the LFC members and committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Joseph to do an overview of what we heard at LESC in this first interim meeting. And then I'll come back and just go over some other details of interim structure.
President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Superintendent Elder. So the LESC meeting started in Jemez and then finished in Santa Fe. We had two APS speakers before the committee. The first one was Sasha Thompson, a second grade teacher at Hodgen Elementary School. And she was on a panel that talked about COVID responses and how students are adjusting in the classroom, and she represented the district well. And then from Royce Benz, also from APS Transportation, who presented on school bus safety panel. Just a quick update on LESC. They do have a new director, and that's Dr. Gwen Perea Warnament, and she is current Deputy Secretary of the New Mexico Public Education Department, but she'll be transferring over in the next month or so to that position. Most of the LESC meeting was really some updates and information. The Public Education Department did provide an update on the social studies standards, and members also heard from a student panel, the teacher panel, and then the safety panel, as we mentioned. There is, a real push from the LESC to really look at high school graduation requirements and educator licensure. So, that you can see that might be part of your legislative agenda going forward. So the first day of the committee was held in Jemez, as we mentioned, and there they really talked about culturally responsive curriculum and the desire for tribal governments to become charter school authorizers as well. So we'll stand for questions later. So Heather.
Later. Hold on, Dr. Escobedo. So the LFC interim committee also started in April. And as Joseph said, LESC hired a new director. Gwen will start phasing in, I think, June 1st. She'll probably be at Santa Rosa when they meet June's 8th, 9th, and 10th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. And we will be bringing back, we've been put on the agenda again, the APS program evaluation. LESC has put it on their agenda with the program evaluators and APS to come back June 10th, which is Friday, so that committee can hear it. Jennifer, of course, is coordinating our calendars already, so I'll be able to send you a link to all of the interim committees, so you can have them on your calendar if you want as well. Like I said, the LFC is still last interim. They started an education subcommittee, and that they're continuing that. So that's what we're going down to Roswell for. Otherwise, the LFC committee today was a lot of offsite tours of places, and not a lot of education related stuff. Tomorrow early morning or Friday, but we monitor both of those committees and try to keep you informed about those or in advance notice. I do think the program evaluation in general, we've kind of been dancing around it all night tonight, provided a lot of more opportunities than I would have predicted for conversation. There's a lot of interest from area legislators. When we were up for LESC, several of those members came up to me and said, can you please put together a meeting for Albuquerque area legislators to talk with your board and APS leadership about the program evaluation. And it was, the request to me was in a collaborative spirit of, we see some real things from this that we want to work on, that we want to focus on, some things that we've learned that we think are things we can work on together. So that's why we have a meeting set up for this Monday, May 23rd from 3 to 5 in the boardroom. It's just going to be a really informal conversation and a time to talk about it. So if you haven't read the program evaluation, or I'd encourage you to do so. At the LFC last month, at the interim committee, Superintendent Elder and Chief Financial Officer Tammy Coleman were our APS representatives. It was about almost 2 hours of testimony and questions. And I thought both did a really good job with the committee. And the committee is largely non-Albuquerque people that generally are not super supportive of APS, but I think what was identified was a lot of statewide issues that I think resonated with their concerns as well. So I'll defer to Superintendent Elder to talk about the report, or I can do a high level of the information we heard.
No, thank you, Heather. I appreciate the time. It's always nice for you to work me into the schedule. with lots of warning. We've talked briefly about the session. We talked a little bit about the mechanics of it and what happened. I think you guys have a sense of that meeting. And I think the key element is that they picked some improvement areas. They identified things like the first teach, the fact that we need to improve MLSS, looked at special ed and our ELL programs and said, maybe we can tighten these programs up. Shocking no one. They also had to acknowledge that there was progress being made in a number of these areas, that we had already anticipated some of their their findings and had moved forward. We've already taken steps as far as right sizing to deal with district enrollment. And we have a formula for at-risk funding that they're quite curious about, and it actually caused some confusion amongst the committee that local boards and local districts can actually work with the budget as is provided to provide, things with the at-risk funding. And they were curious about how we were using it and a little startled at some of our responses. Some of the nice things that came out though, and so we know that we're meeting, I believe, next Tuesday with some local legislators just to have a conversation about this report and to let them ask questions and really listen to them. But I think it builds a nice framework for us in terms of moving forward into the legislative session as far as what are some of the conversations that we need to have. And I think what we will find is that we were very strategic in our responses to LFC in pointing out some of the things you bring up are not an APS issue. It's a state issue. And maybe, just maybe, that's a policy concern. And maybe we need to look at the policies. So, we talked about the salary increases. That's nice. We had salary increases, but talked about compaction, and we talked about them missing entire groups of people who we are now responsible to figure out how to fund those raises. They struggled with cash reserves. They really think we should spend down our cash reserves, and they seem to think one of their comments was that we overestimate deficits and we refuse to spend our money. And had they really not tried to sneak that one at the end, and Tammy had been allowed to answer the question, she could have said, you have to put your cash reserves in the budget somewhere. You have to budget. So the line item they were pointing to said, oh, there's $30 million that's sitting there. She's like, it's the cash reserves. And they didn't understand that you can't just not put them in, right? They have to be there. So she puts them someplace that doesn't impact people. A lot of conversation about local control for funding. Again, going back to extended learning time, what does that look like? Across district, can there be flexibility? So pre-K, we talked a lot about pre-K and how that's going to work. So, and then of course the managing initiatives from the state legislature and PED. What we really pushed back on, as I said, you guys, every time you come up with a program and you push that out, you've created more work for the people in the schools. So the dyslexia screener is a lovely idea, okay? But when they say screen all your first graders, and it takes much longer than it was projected to, and I have to remind them, in APS, that means we screen 5,500 children. We were talking to a superintendent from another district. Oh, I got it done in a week. How many kids you have? 30? Oh, yeah. It's just different. It's just different. And so we did mention that there's some policies that, whereas we don't expect them to write policies for APS, but we do think we should be part of the conversation, and the other districts should be part of the conversation, so that we can come up with some initiatives that are positive and beneficial, but are either done in a way that it's not crushing, or there's not so many of them at one time. That's the other problem. They keep hitting us. Oh, we've got 3 good ideas. Let's do these 3 good ideas all by tomorrow. And so that's, some of the trouble we run into. So it was, we do have some really great conversation points. I think next week we can listen to and get some feedback from legislators that have read this report, and we'll have their feedback. And I think we can really build some bridges in terms of moving forward with the legislature in terms of really good initiatives for both APS and the state. So I'm excited by the opportunity that this report has opened up.
And I'll just wrap up by saying, if you look to reminds me, the agenda tomorrow includes a starting look at the offset and match related to public school capital outlay funding. It includes a conversation around K-5 plus and ELTP. Some of the LFC staff have been following up with me about the funding factor for ELTP. So I do think, we're in a position to do, as Superintendent Elder said, and build some bridges and collaborate with legislators out of this program evaluation. So that
Yeah.
concludes our update, unless Superintendent Elder is talking.
I just have one comment, and I also look forward to the LFC continuing these program reviews in all the districts that have yet to be reviewed. Since 2007, they've done 21, is that right, Heather? And we've been twice. So I think maybe as they continue these reviews, they will discover that perhaps some of these problems are statewide. I also remember it reminds you that this was started as a financial, they wanted to look at the financials and they couldn't find much. So.
So this is our discussion item. And a government affairs update, we'll try to do these regularly during the interim so that we can keep you updated on the conversations there. Like Joseph said earlier, there's some things that you can see that are already, the value of the interim has kind of given us some hints as to what we might see in the legislative session in terms of proposed legislation. I wouldn't be surprised to see high school graduation requirements, teacher licensure, changes around that, for example. But with that, we stand open for your questions and comments.
Thank you. I think I'm going to start because I always go last. I'm kind of like, I'm a little sleepy, but I know that part of the presentation and, you know, they're asking for like a specific plan, like we have to address the responses and have a plan for some of the concerns that were listed in there. How will that be done? I mean, so are we going to start? When and how will we start working on that? Because I know for example, on right sizing the district, you know, which is a huge, I mean, that's filled with a lot of opportunities there for a conversation, but what's our strategy around that? What are we thinking about how we would plan for some of the responses that we have to put together and give them? And was there a timeline?
Board Member Cordova, Board President, there is no timeline that was given to us. And as they acknowledged in the presentation, we've already begun quite a few of these. So in terms of right sizing, they really did recommend that we had to look at our staffing. We did that. It was hard. It was unpleasant, but we did it. We still have open positions. We're still hurting for special ed teachers. You know, they're always the most difficult to find. We have plans to do some hubbing of programs. And then we get into the conversation that they would like to talk about is the potential closure of schools. And we have plans that we can put in front of you. We started those back in 2016. And we have things that we can run by you and show you. One of the things we would like to propose is instead of just closing schools, it would be to repurpose schools. And whether that is the concept of moving a charter in there, which is fine. We can put charters in there. They don't always jump at the opportunity. But maybe looking at the pre-K, how do we expand pre-K options for kids? And we have some thoughts. So that work already began and it's been going on kind of for a while. We just have sort of sat on it for various reasons. The finances were already well past many of the things that they had wanted, you know, training and manuals, and that's already done. So there's a few elements in there that we probably will have to look at a little more carefully, but some of it I think will be addressed when we finally sit down and write the strategic plan and really start talking about some of the academic outcomes that need to improve and what that might look like. So we're there. I'm really, this report was not, it didn't turn out the way that I think people thought it might, because they found things about us that kind of countered some of the prevailing urban legends about APS and found out it's not really as bad as I think they hoped, which is good, right? That's a good thing.
And I think that's good. You know, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're leading with, you know, that we are taking it seriously as well, because I think there are things, and it's like you said, if we've we've started some conversations and we've put them on hold. Obviously, the pandemic has, has also put some things to a stop, and, we need to pick that up. But when I start to think of things like repurposing schools or even going in that direction, that's a huge conversation, and it really does need to involve the community too, so that we can make sure that, we don't end up just, getting people just all riled up, but that we also are doing it in a very thoughtful way. So I'm looking forward to sort of reigniting that conversation, so that that they know that we are, yes, it is something that we need to take a look at, because right sizing comes in various forms, right? From our staffing to the way that we're budgeting to like our schools, and are we able to fully support schools, our entire real estate that we have, given, the budget that we have, and are we being fair? And, is there issues of equity as a result of, some schools that are extremely struggling because of just, the overall pieces that we have to support for that. I'm always amazed at just what our capital outlay expenses are. And it's important, because places matter and the school quality definitely matters. And I want to make sure that we're looking at it from that lens as well, in terms of what we can afford and how we can do it and do it well, so that students, no matter what zip code they're living in, they have a good school to go to, and they have a school that's going to be able to support that. And I know we work really hard on that. I think it's part of the conversations that we need to have around just what we're funding and how we're doing it. And I'll stop there and just open it up for comments on anyone else that has comments.
I have actually a question for Heather, if you could help me out here, because obviously now that, we have a few months till session starts again in the new year, is there particular things we need to be discussing with our personal representatives and senators and having these discussions since now? Aside from like the stuff that we know with budget and, the obvious, but things that we're going to need to be addressing, for the new session, that we can all have the same message going forward?
Board Member Tapia Romero and President Montoya Cordova and members of the board. So what I would say is that we should be careful to make sure that we're agreeing to all talk about the same talking points and the same advocacy. If it's advocacy, if it's just, information, I mean, obviously you can build relationships with your legislators, but I'm always really careful when we're representing APS, and I'm not representing just Heather's point of view. And I would kind of say the same thing. We go through a formal legislative agenda process. We'll start kind of brainstorming in October, November, December. So we'll start, talking about what things do we all agree upon are priorities for APS. And then once we have that resolved, we're kind of in a safer place for advocacy. This meeting on Monday is really about just conversation and listening and kind of sharing of ideas and collaborating. And we'll start to probably, I think it'll be an awesome opportunity to start getting some of those ideas for what we think should become advocacy, but in maybe a more collaborative and earlier start than what we've had in the past. So I think, obviously sharing information all the time, building relationships all the time. When we start to move towards this is what we think APS needs, we should make sure that's a part of a voted on board agenda.
Okay, because I'm one of those that I enjoy having those conversations with our legislatures and just letting them know, even some of the needs that we have, because I think it is important we do develop those relationships and keep them solid, and we can be considered the experts that they go to when they do have a pending question. It's just, I want us to always get in the habit of being proactive versus reactive, and not trying to put fires out later, but being the fire marshal instead of the firefighter, and having a different approach going forward. So, because many times I think we're at events or different, things that come up where we're in the same room as them, and to be able to take full advantage of having some of those informal conversations, with our legislators going forward. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just add, of course, if you do those things and you want to loop me in, so I'm informed, that's good, because sometimes I'll get surprised then to hear about something that I didn't know about or step on something wrong. So just keeping me informed is always helpful. And, as we start to get closer to, November, December, we'll start hearing ideas of what legislation our legislators are thinking about sponsoring. That does really help us, when we're clued into that, help us be in that proactive mode, because as much as we try to be proactive with what we think we need, legislators will have their own individual interests and needs too. And sometimes we don't know an idea is out there to respond to until it's, published as a piece of legislation that's heading to committee. So there's no 100% way to ever get out of that reactive mode in the session either.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
So I have two questions that came up with, let me pull up my little sticky note here. One was with regard to our approach to at-risk funding. What did that, it would be helpful for the board, I think, to know what our approach to at-risk funding is. And if we could know that sooner rather than later, that would be helpful. And then the other was another comment that prompted a question. Oh, so we've had plans for closure, or plans for closure began in 2016. Yeah, it would be nice to see what those plans were then and how maybe they've morphed to the present. That would, if we could have that on an agenda right away, that would be good. And I'm with my buddy here, board member Tapia Romero. It'd be nice to know what is it that we can agree on currently. What conversations can we have with legislators that are germane to the conversations that are happening now? And of course, guidance. I mean, maybe we could hash that out, but then guidance from Dr. Bassett would be good as well. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez, Peterson.
I'm looking forward to Monday. I'm really happy that we are starting this conversation in May rather than in late November. It's really a good thing. And to me, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but right now the conversation I've had with legislators that I cross paths with is around the budget and what the budget really looks like when we start trying to implement it across all employee groups. And, it's exactly what Superintendent Elder spoke to as well. But I think the more they hear it and the more we share, I feel like what we share from what we hear from our constituents is important for them to hear also. So anyway, thank you for getting this organized and for the work you're doing.
Board Member Jackson.
Just the only comment I have is I'm really happy to hear the discussion about more local control for funding. I think that has definitely been not a, I wouldn't say surprise, but it has been frustrating that we are elected, we sit to represent the school, our community, and yet we have so little control over how that funding is spent for our students. It goes to what Superintendent Elder said, is APS is different. We just are. And so I'm happy to hear that we're moving towards a focus of local control. And then just the other question I had is, Superintendent Elder, you mentioned that APS has been reviewed twice, and some of the other schools have been reviewed. Where would we find the other schools' reviews? Are they online? I think there's some, maybe like Las Cruces or Rio Rancho, that I would like to maybe read some of their reviews and see similarities.
So Board Member Jackson, I can try to find some of them. Some of them are online. There was a group review done about 2 years ago with North Central. And if you just Google North Central School Program Evaluation, you'll see it. It was 5 school districts done together in one program evaluation. And then in our program evaluation, there was a map on like one of the opening pages that showed which school districts had been reviewed and which ones had not. I don't know if all of them are online, but I could probably go to LFC and get photocopies of them if you wanted.
I think just maybe more of the bigger schools. I'd be interested to know if Rio Rancho has been reviewed, for example. They've not been reviewed.
No, I think Deming and Gadsden were in a group review. I don't think Las Cruces has. It's an interest. I'd have to pull up the map again. It's interesting. There's a lot that have never been reviewed.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
We wonder.
Well, and
Okay.
it sort of goes along with almost no legislator from APS being on the LFC, or not from APS, but from Albuquerque in Bernalillo County. We are almost totally blacklisted from that committee. It's quite interesting.
Oh, there's a talking point.
Sounds like part of our conversation.
There's a talking point.
Go ahead, Board Member Muller-Aragon.
And so I think this would be, it'd be helpful, I think, if we just maybe had some talking points for board members, so we could kind of be on the same page when it comes to, speaking to our legislators. I think that would help. I always find that helpful. Dr. Bassett, I know you mentioned offset and, the match changes, and I know that's always a concern for APS. What kind of changes do you see there? Perhaps, maybe something good for us.
Board Member Muller-Aragon, members of the board. So I don't know if I can predict with certainty what we'll hope to see, but I think what we've described as the problem really well is that there's $500 million or something that's now sitting in a state fund for public school capital outlay or infrastructure upgrades that a lot of districts can't apply for because the formula, which was set up as an equity-based formula, partly out of the Zuni lawsuit, right, that says if you're a school district in a city that has bonding capacity, primarily the function of your funding for buildings should come from local property taxes, because in New Mexico we have the SEG, right? So we don't fund the operations of our schools based on our local property taxes like most other states do. We get a distribution from the state for the operational costs, and as a trade-off, then the local property tax funding should pay for the buildings. But there's a lot of districts in our state that are in areas that don't have a property tax base. They're on a reservation or they're on federal land. And so it's not fair for them to say, go build your buildings with your local property tax because they have zero capacity, right? And there's also a way that they, so we're at 44, I think, Casito told me 44% bonding capacity for Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. So the formula looks at that and says, wow, you guys could increase your taxes and increase your bonding capacity if you really wanted to pay for more buildings. But the other reality or moving part or problem of Bernalillo County is, Superintendent Elder, I think, told LFC is that we have like 20 other entities that tax the same voters. So even though we're at 41% bonding capacity, our voting rate in Bernalillo County is higher than other counties just because so many other entities can also tax voters. So it's just kind of, I think we're at the place where we're describing the problem and we see that there's funding available. And so we've got to think about ways that we can make that funding available to districts that isn't going to throw the state into inequities because of the districts that don't have that local tax base. So I don't know if I'll say if it's going to be good for us, hopefully, but that's kind of where the state of the problem and the conversation is right now.
Okay. And then when I know you mentioned also the ELTP funding factor and there may be possible changes, are those going to be good ones? Because some of them are not.
Well, Board Member Mueller Aragon, if I was queen of the world, I would say yes. So we're going to say yes. I think we've got them convinced that the 0.10 funding mean is enough to fund the 10 days, but not really much to go fill in those days, right? And so we, I think, have to continue to make the case about what needs to be a part of those days that's missing in the funding to make those days something that people want.
Okay, that sounds like a good one. And then just to kind of speak a little bit to what Madam Secretary had said, we are always fighting for local control and asking for local control. We just haven't got what we keep asking for, but I'm sure we'll keep asking. Then the other thing is there any possible way, I was looking at the NMPED, the strategic plan that they just, that we had just received. And if there's any way that we could kind of go through, if there's some way that we could kind of just get like an update on that, just speaking to that a little bit more, I would appreciate hearing a little bit more about that.
Thank you. That's a good recommendation.
Okay. And then when it comes to, closures of schools that I know the plan was there since 2016. And I know that that is not something that can happen like overnight. It is a proposition that will take, it could take a year, it could take 2 years. So if we're looking at a possible 2-year proposition, I mean, that's putting us out, 8 years from when we were really looking at it. So I think that we need to really think about that. And why I worry is, are taxpayers going to want to keep on, I worry when bonds come up again, when they're looking and going, we have a declining enrollment and we're talking about, yes, maybe we could use our schools and repurpose them for, pre-K hubs, but those kids are not even being born either. Or we can sell them to, to charter schools, but the kids aren't there to fill those buildings anyhow. So I'm just more concerned about when our bonds come up again, are we going to be able to get our taxpayers, our voters to go out and vote for them if we are not really taking seriously consolidation of schools? So it's just something that we need to think about. So we're not reacting like we did a few years ago when those bonds went down. We just don't want that to happen again, especially because we do know that there are many schools that really need renovations and that need repair, they need repairs. And so I'm concerned about that. So I think that's something that we really need to think about and not be reacting next year when, a bond comes up for a vote again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think we got to everybody. Yay. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Bassett and Joseph, for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. So our next item is board member comments. So we'll start out with Crystal Tapia Romero. You said woohoo. There you go.
I was like, we're doing really good. It's not 11 o'clock.
I know, but look, we could get out of here in
Amazing.
15 minutes. Let's go. Let's go for 8. Come on.
Mine's quick. Obviously, I think we all had a wonderful time at the graduations, and just recognizing the graduates and being there to accept them. It was just a fabulous moment, to really, participate in that event. But I want to talk about, yesterday I had the opportunity to go to Chaparral Elementary because they are going to be part of a community school. And just seeing their vision, the way Principal Ms. Mondragon introduced it to her whole staff. And you could just see the fire that just kind of started to, spread with throughout all the teachers there. And they caught on to the vision and what they were trying to do. And we had the principal from Carlos Rey, from Alamosa, from Marianne Binford there as well. And, because they're all excited to be able to be part of, the community schools going forward. And I was just excited because it just proves to some of the great things that APS is doing and the way we're giving back to our students to really help them thrive and get the outcomes that we're looking for. So I enjoyed being part of that. Tomorrow night, I get to go to John Adams' concert. We're talking about fine arts. So I am thrilled to go to that because again, I went to John Adams and I look forward to, walking in there again tomorrow and seeing what they have to show off. So it's been a fun, end of the year celebrations. And, I can't wait till we dive into our strategic plan next. So thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to thank the public comment speaker, Julie Hinsman, for bringing attention to the PED request for feedback on the Ozzie Martinez plan, and just call on my fellow board members to read the plan and on the district to think through how we respond to it, both literally in terms of submitting public comment by June 17th, but beyond that, at a much bigger picture, how we respond to the charge and the Judge Singleton's order to actually make sure that we are providing equitable options or equitable learning experiences for those students named in that lawsuit. I think that is critical to our core function as a board and to as elected leaders to make sure that we're really leaning into this opportunity. The other thing I wanted to call attention to is many folks may be aware that June 3rd is National Gun Violence Awareness Day. It's a national day, and although we're not in a position to be able to pass a resolution as the Albuquerque Public Schools Board, I just wanted to call out some things from their resolution proposed by Moms Demand Action. One thing is that New Mexico has 433 gun deaths every year. With a rate of 20.5 deaths per 100,000 people. We have the 7th highest rate of gun deaths in the US, and this is old data. And we all see the news every day and know of the increase, not just in gun violence, but in gun deaths. So I think it's incumbent upon us, again, as elected leaders, to do everything we can to be responsive to this pandemic of gun violence as well. So one thing that you can do is wear orange on June 3rd and encourage everyone in your communities, however you may define that, to similarly raise their awareness around gun violence in our community, and then explore ways that we can actually address this in our school system as well.
Thank you. I can't even. Board Member Dominguez. It's always hard when I say Gonzalez and then Dominguez.
So I want to thank Board Member Gonzalez for raising awareness to the Moms Demand Action request of us. And I'm going to circle back to graduations. This was the first for 4 of us. And for me, it was very, it was fun. I couldn't stop smiling. To watch school personalities at Manzano, El Dorado, and Sandia, and the excitement of families and friends and students. I realized, or I felt for the first time, just what they had missed. And it was really poignant that way. And then I just want to remind everybody that the Youth in Focus photography exhibit is still on at the Albuquerque Museum, and Sundays is free. So get out there and view more of our kids' artwork, right? That's it.
Thank you. Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
So again, of course, my favorite time of year is this time of year. So congratulations to all the 2022 graduates. I got to see some of the kids that were in my kindergarten class. The last kindergarten class I taught in 2010, they are seniors graduating. So that's always it's a wonderful thing to see them come full circle. And then I know last year, and most of you weren't here, we heard from the school counselors, the same thing that we heard again tonight. And here we are a year later, and nothing has been done. And we said that we would do something. And I know it's a new group. So those of you who are new might might want to look into this a little bit more because something definitely has to be done for them. And of course, I know Member Gonzalez already talked about, Julie's, and I will definitely read everything. We need to make sure we're doing everything that we can. And we're celebrating students and all the wonderful things that happen. And I wish, and hopefully they're going to be writing a lot more about the great things that happen at our schools. So I just want to extend, congratulations again to, the JROTCs at, Cibola and El Dorado. And then show choir. I remember watching my daughter compete in show choir, and they said, we can see it now. It is the most fun thing to see. They are wonderful. And of course, international peace, Jack O'Brien, there were 600,000 entries from, dozens of nations and only 3 from the United States. That is quite an accomplishment. And I know we were at the civics, many of us were at the civics B, and I don't think any adult who was there got a perfect score. I didn't. So I did not, and I will admit it. So, Anna was she was just fantastic. So congratulations to her and, Desert Willow and her family for doing a great job. And the last thing, I know last week, National Police Officers Week started last week, but we weren't able to do board comments. So I know that ended yesterday, and I am a very big supporter of our peace officers. So I just want to thank all of our police officers as we honored you and your service during National Police Officers Week. You more than deserve that recognition. And to me, you are always a hero. You are ordinary people that face extraordinary circumstances, and you always act with courage and honor and self-sacrifice. So thank you. I just think, who runs in when everybody runs out? Who has to tell a parent their child was killed in an accident? Who wants that job? And I thank the police officers who were, and I never say that their actions are unbelievable, because they were believably wonderful and kind and compassionate, and couldn't do enough to comfort my family when they had to deliver us the worst news that, our daughter was killed in a car accident. And to me, that's a very true hero. Who do we call when somebody breaks into our home, or when we get into a car accident, or when someone assaults our children, or, rapes somebody in our family? The first people we think of is our peace officers. They are officers entrusted with preserving the public peace, preserving tranquility. I just think our officers, that is just a wonderful job to have. I think because I have people in my family who are officers, who else puts their life on the line every day at work for people they don't know, and who don't know if they're going to return home at the end of their workday. None of us here, or most of us here in the boardroom, or most of people who are listening, that's not what we do. So I want us to always remember those who put their lives on the line to do their jobs, and of course, their families. I, for one, never, ever forget the courage it takes for our police officers who put on their uniform, leave their family, not knowing if they will see them at the end of the day. They do that every single day. That's courage. That's heroism. So thank you. And I want people, all the police officers out there, to know that you do not deserve to be referred to in derogatory terms, to be threatened and intimidated, endure people spitting in your face, or to say you're not wanted, because you are, or to have obscene gestures made at you for doing your job with honor. You are to be honored, respected, and looked up to. So next time someone chooses to disrespect you, remember there are more people like me who respect you and who are thankful for all you do. Thank you for standing up with dignity when some around you may not. And I hope you were honored last week during National Police Officers Week.
Thank you. Board Member Jackson.
Does agree with the comments that you just made, Board Member Mueller-Aragon, and I can't imagine the conversations that they would have had to have with you. But that's a hard one to go after because my board comments were going to reflect my excitement and giddiness over what we just went through with the graduations. I had a friend of mine, I was sitting in the Georgia O'Keeffe Library and was just thrilled to be there because they were honoring the volunteers who had volunteered over the last couple of years. And she mentioned that I seemed giddy. And I said, honestly, I'm giddy because I love being in the schools. I love it. I love being there. I love knowing that we're doing something to make them better. And I think it was that giddiness is heightened by the graduations that we just had the honor of attending. For me, I was able to go to the Del Norte graduation and the La Cueva graduation, and they were awesome. And what was really cool was to see the different personalities of the schools, like you had mentioned. It's really neat, and it was a really cool reminder that we're all working towards that same goal. But the way that we get there is different because the schools are different and they have different needs. I had some conversations today with some business and community leaders that also heightened my hope and my optimism and the energy that I truly felt the night that I was elected to this position. I think that we have such an opportunity right now to really make some crucial changes to make APS better for our students and our parents and our community and our teachers. And I know that there is lots that we do very well. To your point, Board Member Tapia Romero, there's a lot that we do well, and we need to celebrate that. But we also have such an opportunity right now to reform and reshape and remake APS for our students. And it's going to require that we are visionary, that we collaborate with those who are offering help, not only within the city center, not only within the schools, but the community and the business leaders who are just, they want to help, and all that they want is for our students to be successful. That's all they want. And we have to take those opportunities as they're given to us so that we can be successful. So it just reminded me, I came off of last week just so hopeful that we can work together, that we can create some differences, and that we focus on our students and their outcomes, because every student within APS truly does deserve the opportunity to succeed. I hope that we will engage our community much more and deeper on deeper levels than we have. For me, what's personal are the parents' rights and the responsibilities, and getting parents involved and knowing what they're able to do. And I think if parents know their rights and also know their responsibilities, then that gets them more engaged in the school. And then finally, I hope that we go down the path of budgeting with a vision, so that our teachers and our schools can get exactly what they need to be set up for success. So again, I want to congratulate La Cueva and Del Norte graduates. I hope you go on to great things. I'm sure you will. And I also, just on a personal note, want to also say congratulations to those 5th graders who are moving on to middle school, and congratulations to those 8th graders who are moving on to high school, only because that's what we're celebrating right now. And every time you move on, it's a celebration, and you've done a lot of work. So congratulations, and let's do something. Let's do this.
Board Member Peterson.
Yeah, graduations are a blast. What can I say? And I think one of the most exciting things is I was at a number of our alternative schools, New Futures, Transition Services, Freedom High. There's one other, Academy, which was a big one, not just a small one. And I think the exciting thing with each of those is really seeing how we address the particular needs of a particular group of students, and we do it well. There's always more to be done, but I think the basis is there, and a real commitment to supporting groups of students that don't necessarily match what's in comprehensive high schools. But then you get to the comprehensive high schools like Highland and Albuquerque High, and it is a true celebration. And students really represent who they are. I mean, what's fun is how many chords and how many stoles and how many separate pins that the level, and it's probably a chicken and egg, that the students who graduate are the students that are engaged, and the students who are engaged in those activities graduate. And I think that's part of the lesson for us, is how do we make sure that every student can really access those kinds of activities that are beyond the academic day, beyond what they get in the 6 hours that we have them in that context. And equally, I really think the APS ATF Professional Day Pilot Share Fair was the same kind of celebration of teachers, but in this case, it's teachers really delving into what's important, what engages students, what is going to change practice. And that is remarkable. One of our partners, along with all of our APS celebrations with art and music, is the National Dance Institute. And I had to miss it this year, but they have an end of year performance that is amazing. It is a blast. They're in a number of our schools, so it's APS students that are on stage at Highland Theater showing off the dance work that they've done all year. And it's really a wonderful thing. Let's see. I really, really, really want, and this has been addressed a couple of times tonight, I think we need to see not just the tier of our schools, but really see what's the status of our electives in those schools? What's the status of art and music in those schools? Not just looking at elementary, but really looking at middle school. Is the reason why we have some knockout orchestras and choirs in high school is because there are knockout orchestras and choirs and bands in middle school. And if we don't provide those opportunities in mid school, we lose them, and they're not going to, high school is too late. We've got to address it in middle school. And I know there's some intentional thought, but we need to pull it together and make it real. And from an equity lens, really examine what are we offering across our schools, whether it's electives in more academic realms like ethnic studies and language opportunity to the arts. And we need that snapshot of our district. And I don't find it on SAPR. I mean, I think SAPR fulfills its role for what it is really well, but it leaves out a lot. And we need to get a better picture of that. And that'll help us when we start looking really and truly at the strategic plan.
Okay. President's report. Let's see, I won't be too long. I just wanted to, just echo what Board Member Peterson just said, is that, if we're starting to look at that from a lens of, really truly what's happening around equity, because you just your comment about the band just sort of kind of made me sad and happy at the same time. So I had the opportunity, obviously graduation was big on everyone's list, but mine sort of spanned kind of this really interesting dichotomy because I went to School on Wheels, which is always I just love that school and I love what they do there. It's a place of choice, and we have a lot of kids that make it to a finish line, which is really awesome. Rio Grande High School, obviously my alma mater, it's close to me, and I adore that. But what they struggle with is that they can't really draw a band anymore. The band is so small, and I know that they've asked for alumni to come and play with them so that they can actually have, for the students that want to play, they can field a band. And yet you go to like a Trisco Heritage, which was like, it's pretty massive. There's lots of activity and lots of supports, and it's all of those things that make it available, what's happening in that school. And then topped off with Volcano Vista, which was like, even like the gap is like, it's exponential because you can see the gap in terms of just access and just ability or just capacity of what's happening. And so it definitely, it was fun. I was grateful to do all of the schools that we got to work with, that I got to attend their graduation ceremonies. That was beautiful. But I think it really calls into question is just like sort of budgeting with that lens of like, are we really filling those gaps? And is our budget just creating bigger gaps? And, how do we sort of look at that? So there are places that obviously have greater access. Children have greater access to lots of things. I'm excited about TOPS and hearing enrichment and having access. But, we really need to take a serious look at that, because it's not just about, they have the same number of teachers, or they have this program that's the same program that's at this program, because it's not about just having the same of everything, because that's not going to reduce this disparity gap that we're seeing. So that was my final comment. My final comment actually is congratulations to Dr. Albright back there, completing your doctorate degree. Your photos were beautiful. And then I just wanted to say, if you noticed our photos on the wall, so I know it's official. We're on the wall. So I just noticed that when we walked in today. I thought that was really nice to see. So here we are, ladies. We're official. The 7 board members here, but we'll get our stuff done.
None of the actions we've taken up until now.
No. It has nothing to do with that. But I was just looking at that and it was just like, oh, wait, our photos are up there. It's up, it's done. So I'll just make an announcement of our upcoming board meetings. The next Board of Education meeting will be held Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the John Milne Community Boardroom. I know I said June. I can't believe it's going to be June. And the next special Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 23rd at 7 a.m. at the John Milne Community Boardroom. So just remember that, 7 a.m. All right. And with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Love the 7 a.m.